Chapter 1748. Chapter 1748. An absolute trump card. What tricks do you want to play this time? The white-haired old man looked at Ning Yu vigilantly with an ugly expression. At this moment, the white-haired old man finally figured out his current situation. A closed space. Not only was he trapped in a closed space, but Zhongqiang and little Kailin were also eyeing him. Zhongqiang was at the middle stage of the Sage Realm, and little Kailin was at the early stage of the Sage Realm. With little Kailin and Zhongqiang around, the white-haired old man knew that it would be difficult for him to escape by himself. Since he could not escape, the white-haired old man's attitude towards Ning Yu was naturally very cold. I don't want to play tricks. I just want you to help me deal with a late-stage Sage Realm warrior. Ning Yu shrugged and said, as long as you can help me hold off a late-stage Sage Realm warrior for 3 hours, I can swear to heaven that I will return the remaining half of the Ascension Immortal Grass to you. Puff. Hearing Ning Yu's words, the white-haired old man's eyeballs almost popped out. The white-haired old man was very self-aware. He could only exert the combat power of an early-stage Sage Realm warrior. It would be very difficult for him to fight against Zhongqiang, who was at the middle-stage Sage Realm, let alone a late-stage Sage Realm warrior. Moreover, the white-haired old man knew better than anyone else. Zhongqiang and little Kailin did not use their full strength. If Zhongqiang and little Kailin used their full strength, he would definitely not be able to hold on for long. I know you have that ability. Ning Yu completely saw the white-haired old man's reaction. However, Ning Yu acted as if he did not see it and continued to say, it's not difficult for you to hold off a late-stage Sage Realm warrior for 3 hours. Not difficult. The white-haired old man opened his mouth slightly and said angrily, when I was at my peak, I was naturally not afraid of a late-stage Sage Realm warrior. But now, I can only exert the strength of an early-stage Sage Realm warrior. You want me to hold off a late-stage Sage Realm warrior for 3 hours? You might as well just kill me. As you wish. Ning Yu's expression became gloomy. He glanced at Zhongqiang and little Kailin and made a killing gesture with his right hand on his neck. Whoosh, whoosh. Zhongqiang and little Chelin were still feeling depressed about not being able to use their full strength. At this moment, when they saw Ning Yu's actions, the resentment they had suppressed in their bodies burst out in one go. 2 figures charged at the white-haired old man from 2 different directions. Shio. Meanwhile, the human devil by Ning Yu's side also swept out, cooperating with Zhongqiang and little Chelin. Wait. The white-haired old man's expression immediately changed when he saw 3 experts charging at him. He hurriedly said, we can discuss this. I am willing. Bang, bang. Before the white-haired old man could finish his sentence, Zhongqiang and the little Chelin's attacks landed on his chest. 2 crisp sounds rang out consecutively. The white-haired old man was like a kite with a broken string as he fell backward. Before Ning Yu and the human devil arrived, the white-haired old man had to face Zhongqiang and the little Kailin alone. His body had already suffered heavy injuries. Now that Zhongqiang and little Chelin attacked with all their might, he didn't even have the leeway to parry. Fart. The white-haired old man's body hit the ground heavily. He spat out a mouthful of dark red blood on the spot. His face became a little pale. I am willing to help you deal with the advanced Sage Realm martial artists. Although he spat out blood, although his face was pale, although Zhongqiang and the little Kailin attacked him again, the white-haired old man did not care at all. Instead, he said crazily, as long as you don't kill me, I can deal with the advanced Sage Realm martial artists. Not to mention 3 hours, even if it's 10 hours, I can do it. Ning Yu raised his right hand slightly, signaling Zhongqiang and the little Kailin to stop first. Looking straight at the white-haired old man, Ning Yu said in a deep voice, I'll say the ugly words first. If you can't resist the advanced Sage Realm martial artist for 3 hours, don't blame me for being ruthless. Don't worry, I promise it won't be a problem. The white-haired old man showed a resolute look. He had to lower his head when he was under the eaves. The white-haired old man was very clear about his current situation. If he did not agree to Ning Yu's request, he would definitely be killed by Zhongqiang and the little Kailin. If he agreed to Ning Yu's request, although he would lose a lot, at least he could keep his life. As for resisting the advanced Sage Realm martial artist for 3 hours, the white-haired old man was actually not absolutely sure. In other words, even if he was sure, the white-haired old man was not willing to do it, because the white-haired old man had a trump card. Once he used it, he could burst out a terrifying combat power in a short period of time. Of course, a trump card had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that it could burst out a terrifying combat power, which was the best way to protect himself. However, the disadvantage was that all the tendons and vessels in his body would be broken. In serious cases, he might even lose his cultivation. If Ning Yu really agreed to give the Ascension Immortal Grass to the white-haired old man, the white-haired old man would naturally dare to use his trump card. Because the Ascension Immortal Grass could cure all the problems caused by the white-haired old man using his trump card. However, at the same time, the white-haired old man was very conflicted. Should he use his trump card? Previously, when the Ascension Immortal Grass was with the white-haired old man, he did not use his trump card. Firstly, it took time to use his trump card. Secondly, it was because Zhongqiang had caught him off guard and directly snatched the Ascension Immortal Grass from his hands. Without the Ascension Immortal Grass, the white-haired old man did not dare to use his trump card. Open your mind and let the human demon control you. Ning Yu did not care about what the white-haired old man was thinking. His eyes were cold and he said in a deep voice, "What?" The white-haired old man's eyes widened. He could not believe his ears. He could still accept using his trump card. This was because he had a plan in mind. After using his trump card, his cultivation could instantly reach the peak of the advanced Sage Realm. As long as his cultivation reached the peak of the advanced Sage Realm, he was absolutely sure that he could instantly control Ning Yu and the human demon. He could even control Zhongqiang. If he controlled Ning Yu and the human demon, he would not have to worry about the Ascension Immortal Grass. However, Ning Yu's words caused his face to instantly turn gloomy. Once he was controlled by the human demon, what was the point of using his trump card? He was not going to do anything for someone else for no reason. I can help you, but if you want me to open my mind and let you control me, no way. The white-haired old man's face was terrifyingly gloomy. He said angrily, "At most, we will go our separate ways. We will all die together. Go our separate ways. What right do you have to negotiate with me?" Ning Yu sneered. A cold voice came from his mouth. "He's just a late-stage sage. As long as we hide in the Tower of Ascension and don't go out, when the human demon finishes refining half of the Ascension Immortal Grass, his cultivation will definitely recover to its peak. He might even be able to reach the late-stage Sage Realm." Chapter 1749. Who's scheming against whom? As he spoke, Ning Yu waved his hand at Zhongqiang and the little Chelin. Whoosh! Whoosh! The moment Ning Yu's voice fell, Zhongqiang and the little Chelin charged at the white-haired old man at an astonishing speed. Zhongqiang and the little Chelin used their full strength in this attack without holding back. Since the white-haired old man was unwilling to compromise, there was no need to keep him alive. Rather than leaving the white-haired old man alive, it would be better to kill him now to avoid any unforeseen events in the future. Fight! Seeing Zhongqiang and the little Chelin closing in on him, the white-haired old man gritted his teeth and decided to fight for his life. If Ning Yu had other requests, the white-haired old man would definitely consider it. However, the white-haired old man would never agree to let go of his mind and allow himself to be controlled by the human demon. Rumble! A great battle broke out. Under the powerful attacks of Zhongqiang and the little Chelin, the white-haired old man was unquestionably forced to retreat. However, the white-haired old man was not to be trifled with. Sometimes, under the premise of knowing that there was no chance of survival, humans could erupt with extremely shocking combat strength. The white-haired old man was now forced into a corner and had no choice but to go all out. This is not the way to go on. Ning Yu stared at the battlefield and said solemnly, "I've completely lost contact with Sun Deshan. He Jiming must have brought that late-stage sage over. How about this? Let Zhongqiang and the little Chelin help me, and I'll forcefully control the white-haired old man." After a moment's thought, the human demon seemed to have made a great decision. As long as I can forcefully control him, I won't have to worry about him not helping. Don't be rash. Ning Yu hurriedly waved his hands. If there's no other way, we can temporarily hide in the Tower of Yuzuan and wait for you to recover to your peak condition before leaving. That may be the case, but I'm worried that the Tower of Yuzuan. The human demon did not finish his sentence, but his meaning was self-evident. As a cultivator from a higher plane whose cultivation had surpassed the sage realm at its peak, the human demon did not believe that the Transcendence Pagoda could withstand the attack of a late-stage sage. Although he didn't believe it, human demon wouldn't say it in front of Ning Yu. Don't worry, the Transcendence Pagoda will definitely be fine. How could Ning Yu not know what the human demon meant? To be honest, even Ning Yu wasn't sure if the Transcendence Pagoda could withstand the attack of a late-stage sage. But now, Ning Yu had to take a gamble. This was because Ning Yu knew very well that the human demon's current state did not allow him to forcibly control the white-haired old man. Once it was forcefully controlled, the consequences would be terrifying. At the very least, they would be severely injured and unable to recover. Heavy cases. They might even die on the spot. The human demon opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but stopped abruptly. Poochie. On the other side, the white-haired old man suddenly spat out a mouthful of dark red blood. His face became extremely pale. Of course, the white-haired old man's pale face wasn't because of human demon's silence. The human demon had kept his mouth shut because the white-haired old man had made a compromise. I surrender. When the white-haired old man said these words, the entire first level of the Transcendence Pagoda fell silent. Zhong Qiong and the little Chelin had originally planned to kill the white-haired old man, but now that he had chosen to surrender, they naturally wouldn't continue attacking. Instead, they turned their gazes to Ning Yu, wanting to hear what Ning Yu had to say. If Ning Yu wanted them to kill the white-haired old man, they would definitely continue attacking. Relax your mind. Frowning slightly, although Ning Yu didn't know what the white-haired old man was planning, Ning Yu still said, as long as you're willing to let human demon control you, what I said before still stands. I can relax my mind, but I won't let human demon control me. The white-haired old man took a deep breath and spoke in a slightly dispirited tone. Ning Yu raised his brow and raised his right hand, ready to swing it down. Seeing Ning Yu's action, the white-haired old man's face paled and he hurriedly said, I don't trust human demon's character. I only trust you. Ning Yu's eyes widened in disbelief. Don't trust human demon's character? It's probably Shi Laji. However, this thought only lingered in Ning Yu's mind for a second before Ning Yu tossed it to the back of his mind. The white-haired old man couldn't be Shi Laji. Since that was the case, there was only one reason why the white-haired old man didn't want to let human demon control him. He had a guilty conscience. Ning Yu's face couldn't help turning grave. He was only an initial phase Sky Supreme. If the white-haired old man schemed against him, the consequences would be unimaginable. Senior, I'll have to trouble you later. Ning Yu first sent a voice transmission to the human demon before turning to the white-haired old man. I can relax my mind, but don't you dare play any tricks. How would I dare to play any tricks? The white-haired old man immediately waved his hand. I'll relax my mind now. You can control me at any time. Then, the white-haired old man closed his eyes and acted as if he was waiting to be slaughtered. Ning Yu's eyes turned cold. A drop of blood flew out from his heart and flew towards the white-haired old man at a shocking speed. Sizzle. Sizzle. The speed of the blood was so fast that sizzling sounds could be heard as it rubbed against the air. The white-haired old man's face changed when he sensed that it wasn't Ning Yu's soul force flying towards him, but a drop of blood. But at this moment, the white-haired old man wouldn't resist. Because the white-haired old man knew very well that so long as he dared to resist, then Ning Yu would definitely kill him. Twice, no more thrice. Ning Yu could tolerate him going back on his word twice, but he definitely wouldn't tolerate him going back on his word a third time. Therefore, the white-haired old man chose to endure. Whoosh. A drop of blood, or more accurately, a drop of dark gold blood, entered the white-haired old man's body through his back and forced its way into his sea of consciousness. Rumble. A drop of dark gold blood suddenly appeared in his sea of consciousness. The white-haired old man's head rumbled as he felt unbearable pain. This kind of pain, there are psychological, there are physical. The white-haired old man thought that his plan was foolproof, but who would have thought that he would still be tricked by Ningyu? The blood of the war god's physique. The white-haired old man wasn't a hothead. He understood the blood of the war god's physique better than anyone else. I definitely can't compromise. The white-haired old man took a deep breath and decided to ignore the blood of the war god's physique in his sea of consciousness. As the saying went, where there's life, there's hope. The white-haired old man had to be extremely careful when dealing with the blood of the war god's physique. He had to find a foolproof plan. Otherwise, if he acted rashly, there was a high possibility that he would be seriously injured even if he regained control of his body. On Ningyu's side, there was Zhongqiong, who was in the middle stage of the sage, the small Kailin, and the human demon, who were in the early stage of the sage. Chapter 1750. Blood Witch's Saber Bang. At the same time, outside the main gate of Emperor Palace, He Jiming casually pushed a martial artist of the early stage of the sage realm several meters back. He stared at the martial artist in front of him and said coldly, "Di Xiao, I'll give you one last chance." Hearing He Jiming's words, Di Xiao's face darkened. To be honest, Di Xiao really wanted to rely on He Jiming. However, he did not lose his mind. Di Xiao knew better than anyone else that if he dared to rely on He Jiming, Ningyu would kill him immediately. He was different from Sun Deshun. Sun Deshun was able to escape Ningyu's control because of He Jiming and Enhaoping's help. Secondly, Ningyu was helping human demon to refine the ascending immortal grass. The right time, place, and people were all necessary. Di Xiao glanced at the martial artists of the early stage of the sage realm behind him and said seriously, "Elder He, it's not that I don't want to rely on you, but I have no other choice." As he spoke, Di Xiao took a few steps back. He then waved his hand and said, "Activate the formation. No one is allowed to enter without my permission." Whoosh! As Di Xiao's voice fell, a terrifying formation rose from the ground in front of the main gate of Emperor Palace. Damn it! Looking at the huge formation in front of him, He Jiming's face darkened. At this moment, He Jiming regretted not taking Di Xiao down forcefully. If he had not wanted to save Di Xiao, the others would not have had time to set up the formation. As the palace master of Emperor Divine Palace, it was not unusual for Di Xiao to be able to control a terrifying formation. After all the resources of Emperor Palace were concentrated on Di Xiao. "Enhaoping, I need your help." Taking a deep breath, He Jiming pointed at the formation in front of him and said, "This formation is the last barrier of Emperor Palace. If you want to enter Emperor Palace, you have to break it. As you wish." Enhaoping did not hesitate. He reached into his robes and took out a palm-sized scroll. Whoosh! He exerted some force in his palm and the scroll flew toward the formation. Although the scroll was only the size of a palm, it was constantly expanding as it flew towards the array formation. Rumble! When the scroll grew to a certain size, it exploded with a loud bang. The aftermath of the explosion of the scroll continued to spread in all directions with the formation as the center. Catcher! Catcher! The powerful shockwave caused the surrounding buildings to collapse on the spot. In the face of such a horrifying shockwave, the formation that Di Xiao and the others had spent a long time setting up only lasted for 3 to 4 minutes before it collapsed. Shio shio shio! As soon as the formation collapsed, He Jiming, Enhaoping, and Sun Deshun dashed into the Emperor God Palace. Among them, He Jiming's target was Di Xiao. He only wanted to capture and seal Di Xiao. Sun Deshun's target was Di Tianming. Sun Deshun was someone who held grudges. Not long ago, he and Di Tianming had chased after the human devil, wanting to probe the depths of the human devil. Who would have thought that he would be controlled by the human demon, while Di Tianming was unharmed? With Sun Deshun's vengeful personality, he would definitely not let Di Tianming off this time. As for Enhaoping's goal, it was very general. As long as He Jiming and Sun Deshun didn't care about martial artists, he would accept them all. Fut fut fut. After all, Enhaoping was a late-stage sage. Under his powerful attacks, none of the early-stage sage martial artists around him could withstand 3 moves from him. Almost every early-stage sage martial artist was killed within 3 moves. Hihi, what a great harvest. Feeling the gourd gradually turning blood-red in his sleeve, Unhaoping couldn't help but smile sinisterly. The celestial spirit region is indeed a good place. The Emperor God Palace is just a force under the Sky Demon region that isn't particularly powerful, but it can already establish contact with high-level planes and send so many sage martial artists here. This shows that the other sects must have also established contact with high-level planes. This trip to the Demon Spirit region, I can kill Zhong Kejuan and Zhong Qiong, disrupt the Zhong family's deployment, and let my gourd mature. This is really a worthwhile trip. Fut. Although he thought about it, Unhaoping didn't hold back. Instead, he increased the strength of his attacks. 5 minutes. From start to finish, Unhaoping spent a total of 5 minutes killing all the early-stage sage martial artists that Di Xiao had brought. Of course, except for Di Tianming. At this moment, Di Tianming wasn't in a good situation. Or rather, he was in a very bad situation. Under Sun Deshun's strong attacks, Di Tianming was forced to retreat step by step. There were a few times when he was hit so hard that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Based on normal strength, Di Tianming and Sun Deshun were almost on par. However, because of He Jiming and Unhaoping's presence, Di Tianming didn't use his full strength. Di Tianming was afraid that He Jiming and Unhaoping would suddenly launch a sneak attack on him, so he naturally didn't dare to use his full strength. Originally, Di Tianming and Sun Deshun were almost on par. Now that Di Tianming didn't use his full strength, and Sun Deshun used his full strength, the result was obvious. Bang! 3 minutes later. Sun Deshun punched Di Tianming's head. A crisp sound rang out as Di Tianming fell backwards. Crack! Crack! Di Tianming's body hit the ground heavily. All the bones in Di Tianming's body were basically broken. Even you have this day? Sun Deshun stared at Di Tianming and said coldly, "This day next year will be the anniversary of your death." With that, Sun Deshun raised his right leg and stomped down on Di Tianming's head. Sun Deshun's kick was very powerful. If Di Tianming's head was unfortunately stepped on, he would definitely die on the spot. Hold it. However, at this critical moment, an indifferent voice rang in Sun Deshun's ears. Hearing this, Sun Deshun's expression changed, and his right leg quickly floated in midair. Turning back to look at Unhaoping, Sun Deshun asked, "I don't know, don't ask if you don't know." Unhaoping waved his hand and interrupted Sun Deshun. He said indifferently, "Step back for now. I still have use for Di Tianming." As he spoke, Unhaoping moved his feet and came in front of Di Tianming. Staring into Di Tianming's eyes, Unhaoping said, "I'll give you a chance to live, but the condition is that you have to tell me everything about the Zhong family." About the Zhong family? Di Tianming was a little puzzled. In Di Tianming's heart, Unhaoping came with He Jiming, so he was definitely an expert from a higher dimension. Since he was an expert from a higher dimension, why would he ask about the Zhong family? Unhaoping could clearly see the confusion in Di Tianming's eyes. Chapter 1751. Forcible Seal Blood Witch Massacre Knife. As soon as Unhaoping finished speaking, Di Tianming's expression changed drastically. The Blood Witch Massacre Knife was the Zhong family's treasure. Even among the 9 great families of the Demon Spirit Realm, it could be ranked in the top 3. It was even comparable to the number 1 Dharma treasure. Di Tianming's expression changed because he knew very well that only a few people knew about the Blood Witch Massacre Knife. Now that Unhaoping said that he knew about the Blood Witch Massacre Knife and that it was a top-notch battle weapon in the higher planes, how could Di Tianming not be confused? The Blood Witch Massacre Knife was indeed very powerful, but Di Tianming did not lose his mind. In the Celestial Spirit Realm or Demon Spirit Realm, the Blood Witch Massacre Knife was a top-notch battle knife, but in the higher planes, it definitely wouldn't be ranked. Although Di Tianming didn't know what Unhaoping meant, it didn't stop him from being suspicious. "Tell me about the Zhong clan. Tell me everything that you know." Seeing Di Tianming's gloomy expression, Unhaoping shrugged his shoulders and said, "As long as you behave, I promise I won't kill you." "Are you sure you won't kill me?" Di Tianming's heart jolted, and he hurriedly said, "I want you to swear the heavenly Tao oath." "No problem." Unhaoping nodded his head before swearing an oath to the heavens in front of Di Tianming. The worry in Di Tianming's heart immediately lessened when he saw An Haoping swear an oath. However, how could Di Tianming give up such a rare opportunity? Taking a deep breath, Di Tianming said again, "I want to be like Sun Deshan." Whoosh! Di Tianming's words caused An Haoping's face to darken. An Haoping would be a little stupid if he still didn't understand Di Tianming's intentions. Not long ago, he had joined hands with He Jiming to rescue Sun Deshan from the clutches of Ning Yu. Di Tianming's intentions were clear. He wanted to regain his freedom, to kill or not to kill. At this moment, He Jiming grabbed Di Xiao's shoulder and walked over. He said in a low voice, "Di Tianming is the sage of the Zhong family. I'm afraid that if we delay too long, the Zhong family will send their experts over. Don't forget that the Zhong family is one of the 9 great families of the demon spirit realm. Once they send a late sage realm warrior over, we will be in great danger. I hope you will consider this carefully. Do not bring us into the abyss." Hearing He Jiming's words, An Haoping stood rooted to the ground with a gloomy expression. Killing had its benefits. Not killing them also had its own benefits. An Haoping was very conflicted. "Help me. I want to use a secret technique to control him." After a while, An Haoping gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "A mere early-stage sage dares to negotiate with me. He's simply courting death. You said you wouldn't kill me." When he heard An Haoping's cold words, Di Tianming raised his right hand and pointed at An Haoping. He even stuttered when he spoke. "What you? I did say that I wouldn't kill you, but that was based on the premise that you told me the secrets of the Zhong family. Now that you haven't said anything, why can't I kill you?" The corners of An Haoping's mouth curled up, and his expression became extremely gloomy. "Xiu." In the next moment, An Haoping rose from the ground and rushed towards Di Tianming from the left. Whoosh! Following closely behind An Haoping was He Jiming, who was at the intermediate stage sage. He Jiming rushed towards Di Tianming from the right. With Sun Deshan glaring at him from the left and right, Di Tianming had no chance to fight back and was sent flying dozens of feet away. Normally, An Haoping would have teased him a little, but now, An Haoping was in no mood at all. There was only one thought in An Haoping's mind, and that was to dig out everything in Di Tianming's head before Ning Yu killed him. He placed his right hand on Di Tianming's head, and a steady stream of soul power entered Di Tianming's body. As the soul power entered Di Tianming's head, Di Tianming kept screaming hysterically. Memory deprivation. Not to mention that Di Tianming's cultivation was at the early stage sage. Even if Di Tianming's cultivation was at the intermediate stage sage, or even the late stage sage, he would not be able to bear the pain of having his memory deprived. This pain was not superficial, but deep in his bones. Damn it! The more he devoured Di Tianming's memory, the uglier An Haoping's face became. In the end, An Haoping even cursed. After half an hour of work, An Haoping finally stripped all of Di Tianming's memories. From Di Tianming's memory, An Haoping learned a lot of useful information. Especially about the Blood Witch Massacre Knife. Back in the demon spirit realm, there were rumors that the Blood Witch Massacre Knife was no longer with the Zhong family, and that it was brought to a higher plane by the Zhong family's second family head. However, from what An Haoping knew, the Blood Witch Massacre Knife was still with the Zhong family, and it was in the Zhong family's forbidden area. After hearing this news, An Haoping's face became a little better. After thinking for a while, An Haoping decided not to tell the other 2 guys about this news, but to keep it for himself for a while. The Blood Witch Massacre Knife was a treasure. Who wouldn't want it? The in-family status among the 9 great families in the demon spirit realm was not very high, and it could only hover around the middle. If he could get the Blood Witch Massacre Knife this time, the Zhong family would definitely rise, and they would at least be ranked in the upper middle among the 9 great families. Crack. After devouring the memory in Di Tianming's mind, An Haoping exerted a little force in his right hand and directly broke Di Tianming's neck. An Haoping did it quickly. Not only did he break Di Tianming's neck, but he also destroyed Di Tianming's Deen. His neck was broken, and his spirit was destroyed. Di Tianming's fate was almost certain. What should we do with him? After killing Di Tianming, An Haoping's gaze shifted to Di Xiao, and he said faintly, I don't want our plan to be leaked before we enter the Emperor Divine Palace. What do you think we should do? He Jiming's gaze was still on Di Xiao, and he said calmly, "Kill without mercy." And Haoping stretched out his right hand and made a gesture of cutting his neck. "We can't kill him." He Jiming's face was terrifyingly gloomy, and he said gloomily, "Di Xiao is the most important part. If he dies, we will all be finished. He's just a warrior in the early stage of the Sage Realm, so it doesn't matter if he dies." And Haoping shrugged and said, "Don't forget, the enemy is in the dark, and we are in the light. If the enemy plays tricks on us, even if we keep Di Xiao alive, it will be of no use. If I say to keep him alive, he must stay." He Jiming's tone was firm and unquestionable. "You and I will work together to temporarily seal Di Xiao's soul power and perception, so that Ningyu can't get in touch with him." And Haoping rolled his eyes, expressing his helplessness. Since He Jiming had said so, and Haoping naturally would not refuse. Chapter 1752. Chapter 1752. Chapter 1752 Inch Let's go. After sealing Di Xiao's soul strength and perception, He Jiming shouted in a low voice. Then he grabbed Di Xiao's arm and rushed into the Emperor Palace. Seeing He Jiming leave, and Haoping did not hesitate at all and followed closely behind him. To be honest, and Haoping was very worried after spending so much time here. Since Di Tianming was being controlled, it meant that Zhongqiang and Zhongkejuan were probably being controlled as well. And Haoping had two tasks in the Emperor Palace, one of which was to find Zhongqiang and Zhongkejuan. Once this task failed, it would be a huge blow to An Haoping. And Haoping didn't come here alone. There were also the icily handsome man and the smiling tiger from the other war god families in Divine City. Let's split up. Not long after entering the Emperor Palace, An Haoping felt Zhongkejuan's aura. Without talking too much nonsense with He Jiming, An Haoping directly turned his head and swept in another direction. He Jiming knew that An Haoping's target was Zhongqiang and Zhongkejuan, so he did not stop him. Moreover, Zhongqiang was a middle-stage sage. If An Haoping dealt with him, He Jiming could save a lot of trouble. Di Xiao, you two tell me honestly, where are Human Devil and Ningyu? Until An Haoping was far away, He Jiming turned his eyes to Di Xiao. In He Jiming's opinion, since Di Xiao was guarding the Emperor Palace for Ningyu, he must know where Ningyu was. Di Xiao did not refuse. After pondering for a moment, he said, "According to my estimation, Ningyu and Human Demon should be in the hall at this time. Let's go to the hall." He Jiming was swift and decisive. Now that Di Xiao's soul strength and perception were sealed, it was impossible for Ningyu to contact Di Xiao. Under this premise, Di Xiao would not lie. Swish, swish. As He Jiming and the others were relatively close to the main hall, it only took them a minute to arrive in front of the main hall. Bang! Without knocking on the door, He Jiming raised his right foot and kicked the door of the main hall. A crisp sound rang out. He Jiming directly kicked the heavy door into two halves. Shio! As soon as the door was kicked open, a cold glint shot towards He Jiming at a frightening speed. Not good. The sudden change caused He Jiming's expression to change drastically, and he hastily retreated. In fact, before He Jiming blasted open the door, he was already prepared for a sneak attack. But He Jiming neglected one thing. He had neglected the cultivation of the person who had ambushed him. Generally speaking, in the case of the same cultivation, even if someone sneak attacked He Jiming would not be so flustered. The reason why He Jiming was so flustered this time was because the martial artist who ambushed him had a higher cultivation level than him. Late-stage saint. Moreover, he was at the peak of late-stage saint. He Jiming's current cultivation level was only at the middle stage of the sage realm. He did not have much of a chance of winning even if he were to face a martial artist at the peak of the late stage of the sage realm head-on, not to mention that the other party had chosen to launch a sneak attack. However, He Jiming was still rational. He did not choose to meet force with force. Instead, he ignited his blood essence and retreated. Boom! It turned out that He Jiming's retreat was wise. As soon as his front foot retreated, a huge pit appeared in the area where his back foot was. Obviously, the huge pit was caused by the cold glint. Trying to be mysterious, He Jiming stared at the entrance of the hall and said coldly, "Hurry up and get out. Rustle." Not long after He Jiming's voice fell, a group of 3 martial artists slowly walked out of the hall. Hiss. Looking at the martial artists who had suddenly appeared, He Jiming could not help but gasp at this time, especially when he sensed the terrifying aura of the martial artist on the left. Even though he already knew the other party's cultivation level. Guessing was one thing, but when the other party really appeared in front of him, He Jiming still wanted to retreat. The reason why He Jiming had such a reaction was not because he was afraid of a late-stage saint martial artist. On the contrary, as long as he used his last trump card, he could even easily kill a late-stage saint martial artist. However, He Jiming did not dare to use his last trump card. Because once he used his last trump card, he was destined to fail one of the 2 tasks that he had come from a high-level plane. Compared to taking Emperor Xiao away, the other task was more important. I have to contact the sect as soon as possible and ask them to send people down as soon as possible. He Jiming made up his mind that after successfully regaining control of Emperor Divine Palace, he would contact the sect as soon as possible. Some time ago, He Jiming had contacted the sect once, and the sect had also agreed to send a few middle-stage saint martial artists down to help. However, He Jiming felt that it was not enough. He had to send a late-stage saint or even a peak saint martial artist. However, He Jiming was very clear that the sect would have to bear great pressure if they sent a late-stage saint or a peak saint martial artist down. He Jiming, I was feeling sorry that you ran away last time. I didn't expect you to come to me voluntarily. Just as He Jiming was thinking about it, Ning Yu's indifferent voice sounded in this area. Since you're here, stay and have a good chat this time. Crack crack. He Jiming came to his senses and stared at Ning Yu, clenching his fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. Why, do you want to kill me? Ning Yu raised his eyebrows and said, I'm standing here. You can try. Go up and kill him. All of a sudden, an indifferent voice was heard. Following closely behind the indifferent voice was a figure that was speeding over. No, to be precise, it was 2 figures rushing over. After a while, An Haoping grabbed Zhong Kejuan's shoulder and threw him aside. He looked straight at He Jiming and said, He Jiming, I'll help you deal with that late-stage saint martial artist. You go and kill this arrogant guy. Speaking of this, An Haoping paused for a moment and then continued. In addition, bring Zhong Qiong here. He Jiming's eyes flickered, but he did not do as An Haoping said. In fact, the moment An Haoping came over, He Jiming knew what An Haoping was planning to do. Zhong Kejuan was brought here, so Zhong Qiong definitely could not escape. Are you sure you can help me stop that late-stage saint martial artist? He Jiming gritted his teeth and said, if you can really help me stop him, I promise to help you control Zhong Qiong. He Jiming was still very confident in himself. As long as the white-haired old man, who was a late-stage saint, was stalled, he and Sun Deshun would definitely be able to control Zhong Qiong. Sun Deshun's cultivation was at the peak of the early-stage saint, which was not particularly far from the late-stage saint. With Sun Deshun's help, He Jiming's inner concerns were reduced a lot. How can it be fake? An Haoping raised the corner of his mouth and immediately rushed out. Chapter 1753. No mercy. Let's go. Seeing An Haoping charging at the white-haired old man, He Jiming didn't hesitate and immediately made his move. His biggest opponent was being held up by An Haoping. If he and Sun Deshun couldn't take down Zhong Qiong, it wouldn't be right. As for Ning Yu, He Jiming didn't put him in his eyes at all. He Jiming was confident that he could crush an initial heavenly supreme cultivator with one hand. Rumble. A great battle broke out in an instant. After the white-haired old man revealed his trump card, he could now unleash the strength of a peak late-stage saint. An Haoping didn't have any advantage against the white-haired old man. On the contrary, he was at a slight disadvantage. On the other side of the battlefield, He Jiming and Zhong Qiong were fighting fiercely. Under normal circumstances, Zhong Qiong and He Jiming's strength was on par. But with Sun Deshun, He Jiming's chances of winning were much higher. The results of the 2 battles weren't satisfactory. How restless. Ning Yu's gaze rested on the battlefield between An Haoping and the white-haired old man. Taking a deep breath, Ning Yu's face turned a little gloomy. The white-haired old man took about an hour just to use his trump card. Now that he only had a small advantage, Ningyu was naturally dissatisfied. He didn't know when the demonic human would recover to his peak state. He was relying on the white-haired old man to take the blame. If the white-haired old man dropped the ball, the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking of this, Ningyu began to draw the drop of battle god's blood in the white-haired old man's sea of consciousness. Fat. The white-haired old man was originally fighting happily with Enhauping, but he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned a little pale. Spitting out blood was secondary. The most important thing was that Enhauping seized the opportunity. Enhauping raised his right foot and heavily kicked the white-haired old man's chest. Bang! The enormous force transmitted from his chest caused the white-haired old man's body to be swiftly sent flying backwards. A crisp sound rang out beside Ningyu. Obviously, the white-haired old man wasn't too far away from Ningyu. "I'll give you one last chance." Ignoring the white-haired old man's miserable state, Ningyu frowned slightly and said, "Defeat him within 3 minutes. Otherwise, you should know the consequences." Boom. Hearing this, the white-haired elder's heart thumped. The white-haired old man knew very well that since Ningyu had given him an order, he had to complete it. After all, his sea of consciousness contained Ningyu's war god physique's blood. Before expelling the blood of the divine body of war from his divine sense sea, he could only obey Ningyu's orders. "I promise to complete the mission." The white-haired old man gritted his teeth and quickly got up from the ground. In order to make Ningyu trust him, the white-haired old man even patted his chest and promised, "Within 3 minutes, I promise to bring his head here." Bang! Halfway through his sentence, the white-haired old man felt a tremendous force on his buttocks and his body was sent flying. Looking at the white-haired old man's departing figure, Ningyu rolled his eyes and said, "I'm not asking you to suck up to me. If you can't take him down this time, I promise to teach you a lesson." Crack, crack, crack. Due to Ningyu's beating, the white-haired old man's subsequent attacks became even more vicious. In fact, even space itself began to tremble and creaking noises could be heard. Under the white-haired old man's powerful attacks, Enhauping was forced to retreat step by step and lost ground. "Damn it! Are you on steroids?" The white-haired old man's sudden outburst caught Enhauping off guard. Enhauping chose to avoid the attack while contacting He Jiming hurriedly. No matter what, He Jiming was a mid-stage sage. With his help, Enhauping would definitely be able to withstand the white-haired old man's powerful attacks. However, Enhauping overlooked something. At this time, He Jiming couldn't even protect himself. How could he have time to care about Zhong Qiong's life? "Damn it, how did you become so strong?" After forcing Zhong Qiong to retreat, He Jiming rubbed his slightly swollen eyes. His face was blue and white, which was very ugly. Previously, He Jiming thought that he and Zhong Qiong were on par, and he was not the only one who thought so. It was estimated that many people thought so. However, after a few minutes of fighting, He Jiming knew that he was a little weaker than Zhong Qiong without using his last trump card. With Sun Deshan's help, he could barely tie with Zhong Qiong. Moreover, this tie had already been declared non-existent when Ningyu beat the white-haired old man. Perhaps he was worried that Ningyu would get angry, or perhaps he was worried that Ningyu would be dissatisfied. In short, Zhong Qiong's combat effectiveness instantly rose by several %. Don't underestimate this combat effectiveness. Zhong Qiong was a mid-stage sage, and every increase in strength was a huge pressure on the early-stage sage Sun Deshan. After a while, when Zhong Qiong's strength rose by 50%, Sun Deshan finally couldn't hold on any longer and was sent flying like a dead dog. Bang! His heavy body slammed into the ground, producing a sound that was not particularly loud. Originally, Ningyu didn't care about Sun Deshan's life or death, but when he thought of the human demon refining the immortal ascension grass and the little Cheline helping from the side, Ningyu decided to send Sun Deshan into the Tower of Ascension. This time, Ningyu only brought Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man out of the Great Hall. As for the human demon and the little Cheline, they stayed in the Tower of Ascension. If he gave them some energy at this time, they might be able to recover a step earlier. As long as the human demon could recover and use the power of the immortal ascension grass to suppress the energy seal, He could even raise his cultivation to the late-stage sage realm. At that time, with the human demon's help, he might be able to control He Jiming and Enhaoping. Just the thought of controlling a late-stage sage cultivator excited him. What are you doing? Sun Deshan's eyes narrowed as he looked at the approaching Ningyu, who had a smirk on his face. He hurriedly said, I had no choice. He Jiming and Enhaoping provoked me, and they insisted on helping me resolve it. Crack. Ningyu wasn't interested in Sun Deshan's nonsense. He raised his right foot and stomped heavily on Sun Deshan's head. Sun Deshan was already heavily injured, and now that Ningyu had stomped on his head, he stopped breathing on the spot. Get in. Ningyu knew that this stomp couldn't kill an early-stage sage cultivator. So after stomping, Ningyu immediately grabbed Sun Deshan's shoulder and threw him into the Tower of Ascension. Whoosh! Only when Sun Deshan entered the Tower of Ascension did Ningyu let out a long breath. As the saying went, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. In that instant, Ningyu was really worried that Sun Deshan would fight to the death with him. Sun Deshan's aura was gone, but his primordial spirit was still there. If the primordial spirit of a peak early-stage sage cultivator really fought to the death, it would be somewhat troublesome. Taking the initiative to deal with Sun Deshan had put Ningyu at great risk. This wasn't because Ningyu took the initiative to take the risk, but because he wanted to show Di Xiao. Chapter 1754. Chapter 1754, Compromise. Compared to Sun Deshan, at least Di Xiao was more important to He Jiming. He Jiming was more willing to take risks for Di Xiao. Turning his head to look at the two battlefields, Ningyu slightly furrowed his brows. He moved his feet and walked toward Di Xiao. Ka. Di Xiao's eyes were cold. He clenched his fists and his whole body trembled. The person Di Xiao wanted to kill the most was Ningyu. In fact, even if Ningyu hadn't made such a big move in the Divine Emperor Palace, Di Xiao would still want to kill Ningyu. Di Xiao not only wanted to kill Ningyu, but also Ningyu's parent. Originally, Di Xiao wanted to wait until this matter was over, then personally go to the Supreme Nine Purities Temple and let those old guys in the Supreme Nine Purities Temple see how wrong Mu Yunshan's choice of Ninghai was. But now it seemed that it might be a little difficult. Not to mention whether Ningyu would kill him. Even if Ningyu didn't kill him, He Jiming would take him to a higher plane. Relatively speaking, it was easier to go from a lower plane to a higher plane. Descending from a higher plane was 10 times more difficult. Of course, Di Xiao was only half right. Ningyu wouldn't kill him, because Ningyu felt that he had secrets. As for the other half, He Jiming would take him to a higher plane, which was very likely his wishful thinking. He Jiming had been suppressed by Zhong Qiong to the point that he couldn't breathe. It was unknown how long he could last. Your mind is in a mess. Ningyu stopped 5 meters away from Di Xiao. Staring at Di Xiao, Ningyu said faintly, from your eyes, I see a strong killing intent, but at the same time, speaking of this, Ningyu paused for a moment and then continued, you are afraid that I have a backup plan. However, you don't have to worry about that. To tell you the truth, I don't have any tricks up my sleeves. In fact, if you attack me, you will immediately capture me. Ningyu's words set off a storm in Di Xiao's heart. If Ningyu hadn't mentioned it, Di Xiao wouldn't have been so afraid. Di Xiao had even thought of making a sudden move to capture Ningyu. However, since Ningyu had said so, Di Xiao had no choice but to take it seriously. From Di Xiao's point of view, with Ningyu's shrewdness, how could he not have a backup plan? Perhaps Ningyu had already set up a trap for him and was waiting for him to fall into it. What, are you scared? Seeing Di Xiao standing there with his eyes flickering, Ningyu's tone suddenly changed, and he said coldly, if you are afraid, then quickly remove the seal on your body, or you should know the consequence. Di Xiao's heart thumped. At this time, Di Xiao faintly felt some lingering fear. Fortunately, he didn't act rashly just now. Otherwise, with Ningyu's usual domineering style, he would have long been finished. If Ningyu knew what Di Xiao was thinking at this time, his mouth would probably twitch. As the saying goes, using the tiger's skin to accomplish great things. Now, Ningyu only threatened a little, without even using the tiger's skin, and forced Di Xiao to admit defeat. The seal on my body was jointly set up by He Jiming and An Haoping. Relying on my ability alone, it is impossible to break it. Taking a deep breath, Di Xiao's face was solemn, and he said, "If you have the ability." Di Xiao didn't continue the rest of the sentence, but the meaning was self-evident. Di Xiao did choose to admit defeat, but he was not that stupid. Di Xiao's attitude was very clear. I can admit defeat, but you have to show the strength that you deserve. How could Ning Yu not know what Di Xiao was thinking? But breaking the seal on Di Xiao's body, Ning Yu couldn't do it at all. Although he couldn't do it, Ning Yu didn't refuse Di Xiao. Instead, he said coldly, "Enter the Tower of Yuzuan, and the human demon will naturally help you break the seal." This, Di Xiao's mouth opened, and his face looked very conflicted. It was still the same problem. On one hand, Di Xiao wanted to compromise, but on the other hand, he was worried that Ning Yu was playing tricks. Although He Jiming and An Haoping were at a disadvantage, who knew the final result? If He Jiming and An Haoping won, and he went to Ning Yu's side, wouldn't he be unable to please both sides? Ning Yu snorted coldly, then immediately moved his feet and retreated a little further. Since he failed to get something without risking anything, Ning Yu naturally wouldn't stay any longer. Once Di Xiao became ruthless and attacked him without hesitation, wouldn't the consequences be dire? Judging from the situation on the other two battlefields, He Jiming and An Haoping's defeat was only a matter of time. At this time, there was no need for Ning Yu to gamble his life with Di Xiao. If he won the gamble, it would be fine, but if he lost, it would really be over. Bang! Bang! Not long after Ning Yu retreated, the outcome of the battle in the distance was decided. Two crisp sounds rang out one after the other, indicating that both He Jiming and An Haoping had lost. Fart! Fart! Heavily slamming into the ground, He Jiming and An Haoping spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Whoosh! Whoosh! He Jiming and An Haoping had just been defeated, but Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man chose to follow up their victory. Hit the snake where it hurts, don't hold back. Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man knew very well that Ning Yu definitely didn't want to see He Jiming and An Haoping escape. Although it would be difficult for Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man to kill He Jiming and An Haoping with their strength, capturing them wouldn't be a problem. I choose to enter the Tower of Ascension. Di Xiao still had the foresight to size up the situation. Seeing that He Jiming and An Haoping had been defeated, Di Xiao immediately decided to compromise. As long as there's life, there's hope. Di Xiao wasn't a fool. He knew that he could only compromise with Ning Yu. Compromise was the only way out. If this dragged on, when Ning Yu's patience ran out, he wouldn't even have the chance to compromise. Welcome. Ning Yu was slightly taken aback, but he quickly opened the Tower of Ascension for Di Xiao. Since Ning Yu wanted to study Di Xiao again, he didn't make things difficult for him at this time. There was still a long way to go. There was no need to waste too much time on Di Xiao at such a critical moment. Ning Yu arranged for Di Xiao to stay on the second floor of the Tower of Ascension, then put away the Tower of Ascension and walked forward. Not far from Ning Yu, He Jiming and An Haoping were both kneeling on the ground with unwillingness. Compared to An Haoping, He Jiming was even more furious. He Jiming clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. He didn't care at all. At this moment, He Jiming's heart was in a fierce struggle. He Jiming had two thoughts in his mind. One was to disregard everything and use his final trump card. He had to kill Ning Yu and the others even at the risk of being punished by the sec. The other was to compromise temporarily, then wait for an opportunity. No matter which idea it wasn't good for He Jiming. He Jiming wasn't stupid. On the contrary, he was very smart. If he used his final trump card now, even if he could kill Ning Yu, he would be remembered by the sect's upper echelons. If he was remembered by the sect's upper echelons, he could only wait to die. Chapter 1755. Chapter 1755. Chapter 1755. Communicating with a high-level plane. What should I do? Looking at Ning Yu, who was walking toward him, He Jiming's eyes flickered, and he was struggling internally. It was not good to compromise, nor was it good to not compromise. For a moment, He Jiming was completely at a loss. I'll take a gamble. Seeing that Ningyu was about to reach him, He Jiming gritted his teeth and made a decision. Compromise. After some comparison, He Jiming felt that compromise was the best solution. Although it was dangerous to compromise, He Jiming had no choice but to compromise. If he didn't compromise, he would be killed immediately. If he compromised, there was still a chance of survival. You came from a high-level plane. Not long after, Ningyu stood in front of He Jiming, raised his eyebrows, and said lightly, "Why is your cultivation only at the mid-stage of the sage realm?" Hearing Ningyu's words, He Jiming's face darkened. What did he mean by his cultivation only at the mid-stage of the sage realm? One must know that there was a plane barrier between high-level planes and low-level planes. The plane barrier of the immortal spirit realm had a fatal suppressive effect on the warriors who descended from high-level planes. In the high-level planes, although He Jiming's cultivation did not surpass the sage realm, it was also at the sage perfection realm. After being suppressed by the plane barrier, He Jiming's cultivation was only at the mid-stage of the sage realm. He Jiming did not believe that Ningyu did not know this, but he still braced himself and explained, "Actually, my cultivation is at the sage perfection realm." But, sage perfection realm? Ningyu did not pay attention to the rest of He Jiming's words. What Ningyu cared about was He Jiming's original cultivation. After thinking about it, Ningyu asked again, "How many more people will descend from the high-level planes?" Swoosh. He Jiming's expression changed, and he had a vague feeling that something was wrong. The focus of Ningyu's attention was what He Jiming was most worried about. The reason why He Jiming chose to compromise was that he would be killed immediately if he did not compromise. The second reason was that he knew that more experts from the sect would descend. Now that Ningyu was concerned about this, He Jiming suddenly became very vigilant. The price of descending from a higher plane to a lower plane is too great. The sect sending us to the immortal spirit realm is already exhausting the strength of a sect. He Jiming cautiously said, "In my opinion, at least for a short period of time, there will be no more martial practitioners from the sect descending here." "You're not being honest." Ningyu supported his chin with one hand and sighed softly. Then, he said, "How about this? You came from a higher plane. I don't want to make things difficult for you." After leaving these words, Ningyu did not care about He Jiming's reaction. Instead, he turned to look at Enhaoping and said indifferently, "State your identity." Ningyu had long since confirmed He Jiming's identity. He knew that He Jiming came from a higher plane. However, Ningyu wasn't particularly familiar with Enhaoping. Judging from He Jiming's attitude toward Enhaoping, He Jiming wasn't afraid of Enhaoping. The middle-stage sage He Jiming wasn't afraid of the late-stage sage Enhaoping. There could only be one result, and Enhaoping wasn't from a higher plane. Falling into your hands is the biggest stain on my life. Do whatever you want to me. Enhaoping still had his pride. He didn't give Ningyu any face. Instead, he snorted coldly and said, "However, I have to remind you that you're a grasshopper after autumn. You won't be able to jump around for long." Ningyu didn't take Enhaoping's mockery to heart. If he couldn't even take such words, then Ningyu would have lived his life in vain. After a moment of silence, Ningyu decided to let Enhaoping learn his lesson. "Just because I'm not angry doesn't mean I'll spoil you." Ningyu winked at the white-haired old man. Then, he crossed his arms in front of his chest and didn't say anything. Seeing Ningyu's actions, the white-haired old man was stunned at first. Then, he instantly understood. It was obvious. In the blink of an eye, Ningyu wanted to dig out Enhaoping's eyes. Thinking of this, the white-haired old man's heart couldn't help but tremble. Ningyu was only an early-stage Sky Supreme, but he could play them in the palm of his hand. It had to be said that his methods were indeed amazing. Poochie, Poochie. In the next instant, the white-haired old man's right hand formed a scissor and quickly stretched out. Two crisp sounds rang out consecutively. Arth. What followed was Enhaoping's hysterical scream. My eyes, why were you?" Enhaoping covered his eyes with both hands, and his entire person became violent. The excruciating pain of losing both of his eyes made Enhaoping lose his composure all of a sudden. The reason why Enhaoping dared to mock Ningyu was because he saw that Ningyu didn't do anything to He Jiming. He felt that Ningyu wouldn't touch him. He had nothing to fear. Enhaoping was indeed fearless earlier. He thought that Ningyu wanted to control him, so he mocked Ningyu first. Who knew, he might be able to find a loophole. Who would have thought that he would go for wool and come home shorn? He suffered a double loss. Although losing his eyes didn't affect Enhaoping too much at his cultivation level, this humiliation was something he couldn't accept. Under these circumstances, even if he returned to the infamily in the demon spirit realm, he would still be mocked by all sorts of people. He might even lose his core position in the infamily. In the infamily, there weren't many people who would offer help in times of need, but there were many people who would beat a dog when it was down. I don't want to ask the same thing twice. Ningyu's indifferent voice rang out in Enhaoping's ears once more. Enhaoping trembled and hurriedly said, I'm from the infamily in the demon spirit realm. The infamily in the demon spirit realm, Ningyu thought for a moment, then asked, what's your relationship with Enqianhao? Enqianhao? Enhaoping was slightly taken aback, then said, he should be at the early stage sage realm. His status in the infamily isn't particularly high. In that case, the infamily should have many sage realm cultivators. Ningyu asked again. That's right. The infamily does have many sage realm cultivators. As for the exact number, I'm not too sure, Enhaoping said honestly. Ningyu's expression changed slightly. He knew that there were 9 great families in the demon spirit realm. The infamily's ranking among the 9 great families wasn't particularly high. In fact, it could only be ranked in the lower middle. However, even a family with such a ranking had many sage realm cultivators. From this, it could be seen how many sage realm cultivators the top few families had. The more Ningyu thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. Logically speaking, the immortal spirit realm and demon spirit realm were neighbors. Since there were so many sage realm cultivators in the demon spirit realm, there shouldn't be so few in the immortal spirit realm. As if sensing Ningyu's confusion, Enhaoping explained, actually, there are also sects in the immortal spirit realm that can communicate with the higher level planes and continuously send resources down. Ningyu's heart skipped a beat. This time, he finally understood what Enhaoping was trying to say. The reason why the 9 great families in the demon spirit realm had so many sages was because they could communicate with the higher level planes and obtain large amounts of cultivation resources. Chapter 1756. I see. Now, Ningyu understood everything. By now, Ningyu had understood everything. Originally, Ningyu had been wondering why the demonic spirit realm had conquered the central mainland a long time ago but had not attacked the Dancheng mainland. Now, it seemed that it was because the families of the primordial spirit realm that could communicate with high-level planes had appeared and stopped the 9 superfamilies of the demonic spirit realm. Otherwise, not to mention the Dancheng continent, even the other continents would have been conquered long ago. The Zhong family wants to ally with the Emperor Palace. Don't tell me you have the same goal. Ningyu stared at Enhaoping, waiting to hear his answer. I came to the Emperor Palace with a different goal from the Zhong family. Enhaoping knew that he had to divert Ningyu's attention from him to He Jiming. Otherwise, if Ningyu continued to ask, he would definitely be in trouble. Moreover, diverting Ningyu's attention would buy him enough time. He had not done anything for such a long time. The cold-looking man and the smiling tiger would definitely not ignore him. As long as the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger came, would Ningyu still be able to escape? Although the white-haired old man was a late-stage sage, the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger were 2 late-stage sages if they joined forces. After sorting out his thoughts, Enhaoping said in a deep voice, I'm doing this for He Jiming. As far as I know, the reason why he descended from a high-level plane is to obtain the origin energy of the primordial spirit state. Rumble. When Enhaoping said this, He Jiming became irritable. He Jiming was very confused. Even the saint martial artists who had descended with him did not know about the origin energy, so how did Enhaoping know about it? Although He Jiming was confused, he did not have time to get to the bottom of the problem. He was highly focused. As long as Ningyu showed any intention of killing him, he would use his trump card at all cost. Why should I believe you? Ningyu did not overreact. Instead, he frowned slightly and said, give me a reason to believe you. There's no need for me to lie to you. If you can obtain the source energy, then your cultivation can instantly reach the saint realm. And Haoping hurriedly said and began to tempt Ningyu, you let the white-haired old man release his control over me. I have a way to make He Jiming admit it. Let go of my control over you. Do you think I'm stupid? Ningyu couldn't be bothered with an Haoping. He turned to look at He Jiming and asked, did you descend from a higher plane to obtain the source energy of the celestial spirit stage? No, absolutely not. My purpose is to bring Di Xiao to the high plane. Di Xiao is the person that the elders of the sect want by name. As for what's special about him, I don't know. He Jiming shook his head like a rattledrum, and hastily said, hand over all the treasures you brought down from the higher planes. Ningyu did not seem to care much about the Emperor Flute and the origin energy. He casually threw a storage bag to He Jiming. Pa. Catching the storage bag, He Jiming did not say anything and immediately put all the magic treasures, elixirs, and medicinal herbs he had on him into the storage bag. For He Jiming, as long as Ningyu did not care about the source energy, everything was fine. He Jiming did not dare to admit to the matter of the source energy. Once he admitted it, there would naturally be people in the sect who would deal with him. After receiving the storage bag that He Jiming threw over, Ningyu casually threw it into his storage ring and did not speak again. Ningyu did not speak, and the others naturally did not dare to speak. For a moment, the entire area became quiet. Zhongqiong stared at He Jiming, the white-haired old man stared at an Haoping, and Ningyu closed his eyes to rest. As for Zhong Kejuan, who was far away, he had already fainted. Being targeted by an Haoping, how could a half-saint martial artist like Zhong Kejuan have a good ending? If it were not for the seal in Zhong Kejuan's sea of consciousness, Zhong Kejuan would have long been devoured by an Haoping and killed. It was because of the seal left by the family's higher-ups in his sea of consciousness that Zhong Kejuan had temporarily escaped and had a chance to struggle at death's door. Senior human demon, how long will it take for you to recover? Ningyu closed his eyes to rest, but it did not mean that he was very relaxed. On the contrary, Ningyu was very worried at this time. As the saying goes, a dog that bites does not bark. And Haoping's current state was that of a mad dog, deliberately diverting attention. As a late saint martial artist of the Yin family, and the Yin family could even contact high-level planes, Ningyu would be the first to believe that an Haoping did not have any ambitions. According to Ningyu's speculation, an Haoping was waiting for the experts of the Yin family to come. It was true that an Haoping was waiting, but wasn't Ningyu also waiting? An Haoping was waiting for the experts of the Yin family to come, while Ningyu was waiting for the human demon to recover to his peak state. I've long recovered, but I'm currently suppressing the energy seal. I want to rely on the remaining power of the Ascension Immortal Grass to raise my cultivation to the peak of late saint. Inside the Yuzuan pagoda, the human demon threw Sun Deshan's corpse to the side and replied, you wait on your side. Although the human demon was inside the Yuzuan pagoda, he was completely aware of what was happening outside. With the little Chilene's help and Ningyu giving all the Chilean fruits and Chilean blood to the human demon had already recovered 10 minutes ago. However, the human demon knew very well that recovery was not the main point. The main point was whether he could raise his cultivation to the peak of late saint. After the little Chilean helped the human demon recover to the mid-saint stage, it returned to the little girl with golden hair. As for the suppression of the energy seal, it was entirely up to the human demon himself. If it really doesn't work, we can temporarily hide. Ningyu thought about it and voiced his concerns. According to Ningyu's plan, after taking down He Jiming and an Haoping, they would immediately leave Divine Emperor Palace. However, the human demon did not think so. The human demon wanted to capture the martial artists behind an Haoping and the martial artists from the higher planes in one fell swoop to avoid future trouble. At the same time, the human demon said that if Ningyu was worried, he could leave first. Since the human demon had already said that, it would be a little unreasonable for Ningyu to leave now. We can't drag this out for long, at most 10 minutes. Ningyu gritted his teeth. And Haoping's little tricks naturally did not escape Ningyu's eyes. If this continued, he believed that in less than 10 minutes, the martial artists behind Enhaoping would arrive. Moreover, apart from Enhaoping, He Jiming was also gradually becoming restless. Under such circumstances, Ningyu naturally did not want to take any more risks. 10 minutes is enough. The human demon revealed an expression of relief and said, "Just watch. You don't need to worry about the rest. Just sit back and watch the show." Hearing Ningyu's solemn tone, the human demon thought that he did not have much time left. Who would have thought that there would still be 10 minutes left? Chapter 1757. A foolproof plan. Tick. Tick. Time was ticking away. 10 minutes wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. He Jiming and Enhaoping did not dare to act rashly. For them, as long as the person behind them did not come, maintaining the status quo was the best choice. Moreover, Zhongqiang and the white-haired old man were still eyeing them. If they chose to go against Ningyu at this time, they would be courting their own deaths. Their brains must have been filled with shit. However, if the person behind them came, then they would have the capital to deal with Ningyu and could have a good fight with Ningyu. Of course, all of this was based on the premise that the people behind them came. Therefore, at this time, He Jiming and Enhaoping were even looking forward to Ningyu waiting. Otherwise, if the warrior behind them did not come and Ningyu suddenly went crazy, who could they reason with? Naturally, Ningyu would not care about He Jiming and Enhaoping's schemes. That was because Ningyu was very conflicted. To be honest, Ningyu did not want to wait for 10 minutes. In Ningyu's opinion, even if the human demon refined the remaining immortal ascension grass in his body and raised his cultivation to the peak of the late-stage sage, it was not very safe. He Jiming came from a high-level plane and was a middle-stage sage. It was conceivable that if another expert came, his cultivation would definitely be higher than He Jiming's. One late-stage sage warrior could be dealt with by the human demon. What about 2? What about 3? What if a warrior at the peak of the sage realm came? Even if there was a plane barrier, it would be very difficult for a sage from a high-level plane to come down. But what about Enhaoping? Enhaoping was a late-stage sage and was an expert of the En family, one of the 9 great families of the demon spirit realm. The rescuers that Enhaoping was looking forward to would at least be late-stage sage. Thinking that many late-stage sage warriors might come later, Ningyu's mind suddenly became active. He controlled Zhongqiang and the white-haired elder, while Zhongqiang and the white-haired elder controlled He Jiming and Enhaoping. This kind of relationship seemed very solid, but when it came to a critical moment, it would instead become a breakthrough point. Actually, it was not that there was no solution to this problem, it was just that it was more difficult. Ningyu actively controlled He Jiming and Enhaoping. Of course, it was very difficult. It was so difficult that even Ningyu wanted to give up. However, Ningyu was very clear that if he did not act decisively, he would fall into chaos. No matter how difficult it was better than being schemed against later on. Taking a deep breath, Ningyu waved to Zhongqiang and the white-haired elder, motioning them to come first. Zhongqiang and the white-haired old man did not think too much. They moved their feet and arrived in front of Ningyu in a moment. Ningyu stretched out his hands, patted them on the shoulders, and said solemnly, "Your task is very difficult. As long as He Jiming and Enhaoping have the thought of escaping, you will kill them." Ningyu's tone was particularly heavy when he said the words "kill them." Hearing Ningyu's words, coupled with Ningyu's decisive tone, He Jiming and Enhaoping's hearts both thumped. Ningyu was warning them. In fact, when Zhongqiang and the white-haired old man walked toward Ningyu, they really wanted to take the opportunity to escape. In their hearts, they believed that Ningyu would not kill them because he needed their help. But now it seemed that their thinking was a little simple. They did not doubt the loyalty of Zhongqiang and the white-haired old man. As long as they dared to run, Zhongqiang and the white-haired old man would dare to kill them. Because Ningyu gave them the right to report first. Behave yourself. Just as He Jiming was thinking in his heart, Zhongqiang had already come to his side. His right hand slapped his shoulder heavily, and he said coldly, "If you let me know that you dare to release your perception, I will definitely peel your skin and pull out your tendon." Zhongqiang's tone was tough and not sloppy at all. He Jiming was shocked, and he hurriedly withdrew his perception, not daring to be the slightest presumptuous. But soon, He Jiming realized some problems. He was just frightened by Zhong Qiong, and he did not react. Now thinking about it carefully, it seemed that when Zhong Qiong patted his shoulder, there was a cold light entering his body from his shoulder. He Jiming could conclude that the cold light was blood. As for whether it was Zhong Qiong's blood, He Jiming was not particularly sure. Could it be a trump card left by Ning Yu? He Jiming glanced at Ning Yu with the corner of his eye, trying to see some clues from Ning Yu's reaction. But unfortunately, Ning Yu had been closing his eyes, and his facial expression did not change at all. Maybe I am thinking too much. Shaking his head, He Jiming put this idea behind him. Ning Yu gave Zhong Qiong a death order. Maybe the blood that entered his body was Zhong Qiong's. After all, Ning Yu controlled Zhong Qiong, and Zhong Qiong must do what Ning Yu told him. The same thing had happened to An Haoping. Compared to He Jiming, An Haoping was more cautious. On the one hand, he pretended to be very frightened, and on the other hand, he began to carefully expel the drop of blood that had just entered his body. This little interlude was soon over. This area also returned to silence again. At the same time, not far from the Emperor Palace. Buzz. There was a slight tremor in the void, and then two figures appeared. Trash is really trash. Among the two figures, one had a cold face, and the other always had a smile. Among them, the cold man said in a cold voice, "An Haoping can't even do this small thing. We really shouldn't have let him join us. Haha, don't be angry." Smiling Tiger smiled and said, "It's not bad for us to let An Haoping join us. Although he can't accomplish anything, with him at the front, the Zhong family will definitely not vent their anger on us. If the Zhong family and the An family fight, we can reap the benefits." The cold man glanced at Smiling Tiger coldly and did not speak. Although what the Smiling Tiger said was true, the cold-looking man was more cautious because of this. Be careful. It would be a bit embarrassing if Smiling Tiger did not know what he was thinking at this time. If Smiling Tiger knew what the cold man was thinking at this time, he would probably shout that he was wronged. He dared to plot against the Zhong family and the An family, but he dared not to plot against the cold man's family. What should we do now? The silence lasted for about 3 minutes, and it was still the cold man who spoke first. Let's wait for a few more minutes, then we'll go in together. Smiling Tiger stopped smiling and his expression became serious. A plan was still a plan. Before success, there was a possibility of failure. The reason why the two of them did not enter the Emperor Palace was because they were afraid. They could plot against An Haoping, but what if An Haoping had secretly contacted the Zhong family and set a trap for them in the Emperor Palace? The higher their level, the more things they had to worry about. They knew better than anyone that a slight move could affect the whole situation. Once the plan was leaked, the two families would be condemned by everyone, and it would be difficult for them to survive in the demonic spirit realm. Chapter 1758. Peaceful time was always short. Ning Yu thought he could hold on for 10 minutes. Unexpectedly, in the 9th minute, the stony-faced man and the Smiling Tiger tore the void and appeared in front of Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man. Bang! Bang! The stony-faced man faced Zhong Qiong, and the Smiling Tiger faced the white-haired old man. Because it was a sneak attack, Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man fell heavily to the ground when two crisp sounds were heard. The stony-faced man and the Smiling Tiger were not fools. As soon as they tore the void, they guessed what had happened. Therefore, when they repelled Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man, they sealed Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man. In order to seal the white-haired old man and Zhong Qiong, they did not hesitate to use 2 ancient scrolls from their family. The stony-faced man and the Smiling Tiger only sealed Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man, but they were not stupid enough to seal Zhong Qiong and An Haoping. Since they guessed that Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man were controlling He Jiming and An Haoping, they only needed to control Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man. Because controlling Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man meant controlling An Haoping, and it was the kind of control that An Haoping could not resist. Fortunately, I have a backup plan. Seeing that Zhong Qiong and the white-haired old man were controlled, Ning Yu could not help but feel lucky. However, at the same time, Ning Yu's face became a little gloomy. If Zhongqiong did not find the stony-faced man, it would be excusable. After all, there was a level difference between their cultivation. However, the white-haired old man did not find the smiling tiger, which was a big problem. After the white-haired old man showed his trump card, his cultivation reached the late stage of sage. Could the smiling tiger hide from the white-haired old man, who was also a late-stage sage? The answer was obviously no. However, at this time, it was not convenient for Ningyu to be entangled with the white-haired old man. He looked straight at the smiling tiger and said coldly, "What do you mean? Why did you break into the divine emperor palace without my permission?" Ningyu's tone was very tough. He considered himself the master of the divine emperor palace. Although Ningyu looked tough, he actually had his own considerations. There was only 1 minute left before the human demon would recover to the peak of the late sage realm. He had persisted for the first 9 minutes. If he dropped the ball at the last minute, it would be a huge loss. Although Ningyu had not spoken to the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger, it did not hinder Ningyu's performance. At this time, as long as they could wait for 1 more minute, just 1 more minute, all the problems would be solved. Early phase Heavenly Sovereign. Ningyu's words attracted the attention of the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger. When they tore through the void and appeared, whether it was Zhongqiong, the white-haired old man, He Jiming, and Haoping, or even the dead dog Zhongkejuan, they all noticed them. Ningyu was the only one who didn't catch their attention. Actually, it was no wonder that they didn't notice Ningyu. After all, Ningyu's cultivation was only at the initial phase Heavenly Sovereign Realm. The gap between an early phase Heavenly Supreme and a late phase Saint Realm was like a chasm. The cold-looking man and the smiling tiger did not believe that Ningyu could cross over. Over the years, they had seen many geniuses. But those that could reach the late phase Saint Realm from the initial phase Heavenly Sovereign Realm were extremely rare, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe them as phoenix feathers and Chilean horns. Therefore, it was completely reasonable for them to ignore Ningyu. "I'm the one asking you questions now. Don't change the subject." Ningyu resisted the urge to lose his temper and said coldly, "I'm asking you why you trespassed into the Emperor Divine Palace. If you don't give me an explanation today, don't blame me for being impolite. Is there really a problem?" Ningyu's calm performance made the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger a little confused. Ordinary early phase Heavenly Supreme warriors, no matter how talented they were, would be very timid and afraid when they saw them. But now, Ningyu's reaction was completely beyond their expectations. Not only was Ningyu calm, but he also seemed to be fearless. This situation naturally made the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger think more. "He Jiming, go and catch him for me." After thinking about it, the cold-looking man kicked He Jiming's butt and said in a deep voice, "I'd like to see what he's capable of and whether he's pretending to be weak." Swoosh. The cold-looking man's voice fell in He Jiming's ears like a bolt from the blue. He Jiming didn't want to go against Ningyu now. To be honest, seeing Ningyu's calm performance, He Jiming suddenly became worried. He Jiming had been in contact with Ningyu for a period of time, so he knew Ningyu's character better. Ningyu never did things that he was not confident of. This time, Ningyu's performance was so calm. If Ningyu didn't have a trump card, He Jiming wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. Human demon. According to He Jiming's guess, the trump card that made Ningyu so fearless was the human demon. The human demon was a ruthless person. If the human demon suddenly attacked, wouldn't he be courting death? No problem. He Jiming was not a fool. He patted his chest and promised. At the same time, he began to communicate with the sect, wanting to confirm when the sect's powerhouses would descend. "Why, do you have a problem?" Seeing that He Jiming agreed not to take action, the cold-looking man's face became even colder. A cold voice came out of his mouth, "I'll give you 3 seconds. If you don't complete my instructions in 3 seconds, then what about you? Do you want to kill He Jiming?" Before the cold-looking man's cold voice had finished, a faint voice came out of the void. Hearing that, the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger's faces changed, and they couldn't help but take a few steps back. As for He Jiming, he revealed a look of ecstasy. The moment the faint voice came out, He Jiming knew that he was saved. There was no other reason. He Jiming knew the martial artist who made the voice. He Jiming, what you're doing right now is really shaming the sec. Following the voice, a skinny martial artist appeared out of the void. The skinny martial artist was around 30 years old. His face was slightly pale, and he looked sickly. Young, although he was scolded by the skinny martial artist, He Jiming did not dare to show any dissatisfaction. He hurriedly opened his mouth, wanting to explain. However, when he saw the skinny martial artist's face, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. After rearranging his thoughts, He Jiming said, "This matter is my responsibility. When I return to the sect, I'll take the initiative to, all right. I don't want to talk nonsense with you." The skinny martial artist waved his hand and interrupted He Jiming's words. He said impatiently, "You just need to tell me if the two of them are enemies." The skinny martial artist's words made the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger's hearts skip a beat. Their faces turned very ugly. The skinny martial artist's meaning was clear. As long as He Jiming nodded, he would take action. There was only one reason why the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger would have such expressions. Chapter 1759. He's an enemy, but not the main one. He Jiming felt that he could not let the aloof man off easily no matter what. However, He Jiming was still very sensible. The most important enemy at this stage was not the aloof man or the smiling tiger, but Ningyu. To be more precise, it was Ningyu and the human demon who was hiding in the dark. Cut the crap. The skinny martial artist did not care what He Jiming said. To him, since the aloof man and the smiling tiger were enemies, he should kill them all. The skinny martial artist said coldly. In the next moment, the skinny martial artist's body shot out and charged at the aloof man and the smiling tiger at a terrifying speed. Damn it! The aloof man and the smiling tiger cursed inwardly when they saw the skinny martial artist charging at them and immediately retreated. Although the aloof man and the smiling tiger were late-stage sage, they would not fight the skinny martial artist who was at the peak of the sage realm unless they had no other choice. They would not fight if they could run, rumble. It was obvious that the aloof man and the smiling tiger had underestimated the combat strength of a peak sage realm martial artist. The skinny martial artist had only casually waved his hand and completely sealed off their escape route, forcing them to fight. The aloof man and the smiling tiger were constantly being pushed back by the skinny martial artist's powerful attacks. They had no chance of winning at all. If there was no external interference, the aloof man and the smiling tiger would probably only need 3 minutes to defeat the aloof man and the smiling tiger. Once the aloof man and the smiling tiger were defeated, the skinny martial artist's next target would definitely be Ningyu. Get close to the white-haired old man. I'll find a way to remove the seal on him. At this moment, the human demon's solemn voice sounded in Ningyu's ears. Ningyu was stunned when he heard this. Then, he moved his feet and slowly approached the white-haired old man. The human demon had long recovered to his peak state, and his cultivation had also reached the peak of the late-stage sage realm. The original human demon wanted to suddenly attack and capture the aloof man and the smiling tiger, as well as He Jiming and the others in one fell swoop. However, the sudden appearance of the thin martial artist completely disrupted the demonic human's plans. In the higher planes, the demonic humans were indeed very strong. Their true cultivation was even a level higher than the thin martial artist. But this was the immortal spirit region, this was the Emperor God Palace. The skinny martial artist was at the peak of the sage realm while the demonic human was only at the peak of the late sage realm. Relying on his battle experience, the human demon boasted that he could easily defeat 2 or even 3 late-stage saint realm warriors. However, the human demon had no chance of winning against the skinny warrior who was at the peak of the sage realm. The only thing they could do now was to form an alliance. Ningyu could guess what human demon was thinking, so he carefully approached the white-haired old man while keeping an eye on the battlefield. As long as human demon removed the seal on the white-haired old man, and Haoping, who looked like a dead dog, and the powerful human demon would be able to kill them all. He might really be able to wrestle with the thin martial artist and see who would be the final winner. But now, Ningyu could only be as careful as he could be. On one hand, He could not let the skinny martial artist know. On the other hand, he could not let He Jiming know. Although He Jiming looked worthless in front of the skinny martial artist, he had a sharp nose. Once he caught a whiff of trouble, the first thing he would do to Ning would be even more difficult. Crack! The skinny martial artist was swift and decisive, while the human demon was not the least bit hesitant. In less than 3 minutes, the human demon removed the seal on the white-haired old man. Fart! Fart! The moment the seal on the white-haired old man was removed, the faces of the smiling tiger and the cold man changed. They revealed some flaws. The skinny martial artist was good at finding flaws. Almost at the same time the cold man and the smiling tiger revealed their flaws, the skinny martial artist's 2 terrifying attacks landed on their chests. The cold-looking man and the smiling tiger did not hesitate to spit out 2 mouthfuls of blood at the same time after being hit in the chest by the 2 terrifying attacks. Their complexions became extremely pale. This is impossible. Even though the skinny martial artist had seized the opportunity, the cold man and the smiling tiger's pupils constricted. Their faces were filled with disbelief. In order to seal the white-haired old man, the 2 of them did not hesitate to use an ancient scroll. Using an ancient scroll to seal a late-stage sage martial artist was a loss no matter how one looked at it. However, the current situation made the cold man and the smiling tiger unable to say anything. It's not right to side with Ning Yu, but it's also not right not to side with him. For a moment, they were caught in a dilemma. An Haoping, it's all your fault. In his anger, the cold man glanced at An Haoping and said coldly, you solve this matter. If you can't solve it, there's no need for you to exist. What do you mean? An Haoping was so angry that his hair stood on end. He said angrily, you 2 late-stage sage martial artists can't even deal with the skinny martial artist. Why should I do it? An Haoping was not someone who could be fooled. Moreover, An Haoping was still very angry in his heart. Where were you when I made my move just now? If the 3 of us attacked together, we wouldn't have to worry about not being able to take down the white-haired old man and the others. Even if we couldn't take down Ning Yu, we could definitely take down He Jiming. The skinny martial artist obviously came from the same sect as He Jiming. Taking down He Jiming could make the skinny martial artist have some scruples and not dare to make a big move. Now, you guys didn't do anything when you should. Now that there's a problem, you want me to take care of it. How could this be? Noisy. The skinny martial artist did not care how the cold man and the smiling tiger quarreled. As he let out a soft shout, he stomped on the ground and quickly dashed forward. If the skinny martial artist had used 50% of his strength just now, then he was using 100% of his strength now. Go out and block him. Seeing the skinny martial artist charging over aggressively, the cold man and the smiling tiger looked at each other, then raised their right feet at the same time and kicked An Haoping's butt. Swoosh. After being kicked in the butt by 2 huge forces, An Haoping felt his body become light and immediately flew toward the skinny martial artist. You guys will die a horrible death. An Haoping's expression changed drastically and he let out a hysterical roar, even if I become a ghost, I will never let you go. Let's go. The cold man and the smiling tiger did not take An Haoping's roar to heart at all. They teared the void together and their bodies went straight into it. As the saying went, where there's life, there's hope. At such a critical moment, sacrificing An Haoping was the best way. Moreover, the main person who schemed against the Zhong family this time was An Haoping. The 2 of them did not participate too much. Even if the Zhong family knew, they could not do anything. They could only vent their anger on their families and fight to the death with the An family. Chapter 1760. Buzz. The cold-looking man and the smiling tiger left as soon as they said they would, without any hesitation. Before An Haoping could face the thin cultivator head-on, the 2 of them had already drilled into the void and disappeared. Senior human demon, should we leave now? The sudden disappearance of the stern man and the smiling tiger made Ning Yu's heart loosen a little. An Haoping blocking the skinny cultivator was the best chance to leave. In fact, Ning Yu had already thought of a countermeasure. The main thing was that if the human demon decided to retreat, he he would immediately activate the blood of the god of war in Enhaoping's body and give the skinny cultivator a strong dose of medicine. At that time, even if Enhaoping did not self-destruct, he would definitely severely injure the skinny cultivator and slow him down. There's no need to leave. Inside the Yuzuan pagoda, the human demon shook his head slowly. No matter what, the skinny cultivator is still a peak sage. Do you really think that's all he's capable of? Ningyu's heart skipped a beat when he heard that, and he could not help but look at the skinny cultivator. Golden cicada shedding its carapace. For some reason, these words suddenly appeared in Ningyu's mind when he saw the skinny cultivator's calm expression. Although Ningyu was not a sage cultivator, he was well aware of the difference between a late-stage sage and a peak sage. Under normal circumstances, two late-stage sage cultivators would definitely not be a match for a peak sage cultivator. In other words, even if the skinny cultivator was held back by Enhaoping, there was still a way to take down the stern man and the smiling tiger. Don't forget, Enhaoping would not foolishly hold back the skinny cultivator for the stern man and the smiling tiger. There was a saying that went, "If you're heartless, don't blame me for being unjust." I surrender. I choose to surrender. Seeing that he was about to clash with the skinny cultivator, Enhaoping yelled, "As long as you don't kill me, I'll do anything." He Jiming looked at Enhaoping with contempt, his eyes full of disdain. He Jiming wondered how a cultivator with no backbone like Enhaoping had managed to cultivate to the late-stage sage level. Little did he know that while He Jiming was suspicious, Ningyu was also suspicious. How did a stupid fool like He Jiming get selected by the sect to come to Emperor God Palace? Shio. The skinny martial artist didn't seem to hear Enhaoping's words. His speed wasn't slow at all. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Enhaoping. Let's fight. Since he could not make the thin cultivator stop, Enhaoping decided to go all out and fight head-on with the thin cultivator. Even if he was going to die, he had to die with honor. He couldn't die sullenly. However, just as Enhaoping decided to fight to the death, the thin cultivator's figure gradually turned illusory. In the end, it even completely disappeared. What happened? The skinny martial artist's sudden disappearance left Enhaoping scratching his head in confusion. Just a moment ago, the thin martial artist wanted to kill him. Why did he suddenly stop? Also, after the thin martial artist disappeared, where did he go? Enhaoping was not the only one who had such doubts. Even He Jiming was confused. Relatively speaking, He Jiming was more worried. What if the thin martial artist really disappeared? What should he do? Whether it was the white-haired elder or Enhaoping, their cultivation was higher than his. At this time, once Enhaoping joined forces with Ningyu and the others, he would be in an irrecoverable situation. Bang! Bang! As it turned out, He Jiming was overthinking. The worry in his heart only lasted for a few seconds before completely disappearing. 2 consecutive crisp sounds rang out in this area. As far as the eye could see, the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger had both landed heavily on the ground not far away, falling face first onto the ground. Want to escape from my hands? You're still too young. After defeating the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger, the thin martial artist flicked his sleeves, and suddenly, 2 cold lights flew out. Poof! Poof! The speed of the cold lights was very fast. In the blink of an eye, they entered the bodies of the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger. What did you do to us? The cold-looking man and the smiling tiger looked at each other and saw deep fear in each other's eyes. In fact, without the thin martial artist saying anything, they had already guessed what the cold lights were. There was no doubt that the cold lights were a means of control by the thin martial artist. If there was no accident, as long as the thin martial artist wanted to, they would immediately die. Why are you still asking when you already know? What a waste of my time. The skinny cultivator glared fiercely at the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger and said in a deep voice, "You'd better stay put. Without my permission, if anyone dares to say a word, I'll make you pay." The thin martial artist's naked threat made the faces of the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger extremely gloomy. But it was very helpless. They could only be angry in their hearts and did not dare to show any dissatisfaction on the surface. After leaving a cold sentence, the thin martial artist moved toward Ningyu. After a while, The thin martial artist came in front of Ningyu and said lightly, "First, let me introduce myself. My name is Liu Chuanji, and I come from Sacred Divine Palace." Sacred Divine Palace? Ningyu was slightly stunned. Obviously, he had not heard of the name Sacred Divine Palace. But thinking of Emperor Divine Palace, Ningyu felt relieved. Sacred Divine Palace must be a superior sect to Emperor Divine Palace. Is he really not from a higher plane? Seeing Ningyu's reaction, Liu Chuanji frowned and seemed a little surprised. The reason why Liu Chuanji did not rashly attack Ningyu was that he felt a terrifying aura from Ningyu. Although this terrifying aura had not reached the peak of the Sage Realm, it was not much weaker. As a key figure in Sacred Divine Palace, Liu Chuanji would think carefully before doing anything and would not offend people for no reason. Although the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger had high cultivation, they were both from a lower plane, so it would not be troublesome for them to attack them. On Ningyu's side, due to the terrifying aura, Liu Chuanji did not attack immediately. Instead, he wanted to test Ningyu. "Let the person behind you come out." Since Ningyu was not from a higher plane, Liu Chuanji was completely relieved. Cold words came out of Liu Chuanji's mouth. "You are not qualified to talk to me." Liu Chuanji was very arrogant, extremely arrogant. On the other side, Ningyu could not help but frown. "As an early heaven supreme, I am indeed not qualified to talk to you, who is at the peak of the Sage Realm." Ningyu's eyebrows quickly relaxed and he said slowly, "At least you know your place," Liu Chuanji said proudly. However, just as Liu Chuanji was feeling pleased with himself, Ningyu's indifferent voice sounded again. "The phrase 'know your place' may not be suitable for me." Ningyu waved his hand and interrupted Liu Chuanji's words. He said indifferently, "I am not qualified to talk to you. What if there is a white-haired elder in the late stage of the Sage Realm? And an Haoping in the late stage of the Sage Realm?" Chapter 1761. Plus He Jiming. Hearing Ningyu's words, Liu Chuanji was slightly stunned at first, then his face changed dramatically, and he hurriedly turned his eyes to He Jiming. Puff. As soon as Liu Chuanji's eyes moved to He Jiming, he saw He Jiming open his mouth and suddenly spit out a big mouthful of red blood. How is it possible? He Jiming's pupils shrank sharply, and he stared at Ningyu as if he had seen a ghost, his face full of disbelief. Doubt, puzzlement, and anger. All kinds of emotions appeared on He Jiming's face. All the time, He Jiming thought that he was controlled by Zhongqiong. Now he was suddenly told that his life was controlled by Ningyu. How could he not be shocked? While shocked, He Jiming was also trying to recall how Ningyu controlled him. I know. After just 1 second, He Jiming understood everything. There was no doubt that the reason why Ningyu could control him must have something to do with the drop of blood that entered his body not long ago. At that time, he thought that the drop of blood belonged to Zhongqiong, and Zhongqiong injected it into his body to deepen his control over him. Who would have thought that the drop of blood belonged to Ningyu? Now that he was controlled by Ningyu, He Jiming's heart sank to the bottom. If he fell into Zhongqiong's hands, there was still a chance of survival. But if he fell into the hands of Ningyu, He Jiming dared not imagine. With Ningyu's character, how could he let him go? "Young master, save me." The more he thought, the more frightened He Jiming was. He even regarded Liu Chuanji as the last life-saving straw and wanted to grasp it tightly. "Shut up." Liu Chuanji's face was cold, he raised his right hand and slapped He Jiming's cheek hard. Pa! An extremely crisp sound rang out in the area. Liu Chuanji's slap directly knocked out a few of He Jiming's teeth, and blood swirled in He Jiming's mouth. "Save me, only you can save me now, young master." He Jiming completely ignored the injury in his mouth and hurriedly crawled toward Liu Chuanji, shouting at the same time. "Stop right there." Liu Chuanji's expression was extremely gloomy as he berated He Jiming, "If you dare to take another step forward, I will definitely cut you into 8 pieces. Seeing Liu Chuanji's angry expression, He Jiming's heart thumped, and he immediately chose to stay where he was. He Jiming was still very self-aware. Although only Liu Chuanji could save his life, he didn't want to force Liu Chuanji too much at this critical moment. If he angered him and the news got out, he would definitely end up in a miserable state. Glaring fiercely at He Jiming, Liu Chuanji turned to look at Ningyu and said in a low voice, "Speak, what do I have to do for you to release that trash? You're quite arrogant. Even a sage intermediate stage warrior is trash." Ningyu shrugged and said, "My request is very simple. Give me the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger." "That's impossible." Liu Chuanji's face turned ashen. He said angrily, "Change the terms." "I'm sorry, I only have one condition." Ningyu curled his lips and said, "Give me the control of the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger, and I will immediately release He Jiming. By the way, I'll take the liberty to remind you that don't test my patience. As long as you dare to attack me or try to save He Jiming, I will make He Jiming suffer a little pain." "Suffer a little pain?" Crack. Liu Chuanji clenched his fists tightly, making cracking sounds. His face was full of anger. How could Liu Chuanji not know what wishful thinking Ningyu had in mind? As long as he gave the control of the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger to Ningyu, then Ningyu would have 4 late-stage Sage Realm warriors in his hands. The cold-looking man, the smiling tiger, the white-haired old man, and an Haoping. 1 against 2, Liu Chuanji could kill them perfectly. However, 1 against 4, Liu Chuanji would have some obstacles. However, the 4 late-stage Sage Realm warriors were secondary. Liu Chuanji only worried about one problem. That was, what was the cultivation of the warrior hidden in Ningyu's body? If the other party was only at the late-stage Sage Realm, he would not need to worry so much. But if the other party was at the peak Sage Realm, then with the help of 4 late-stage Sage Realm warriors, he would be in danger. "I can give you the control of the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger." After thinking about it, Liu Chuanji fixed his eyes on Ningyu and said coldly, "But in addition to He Jiming, you have to let Di Xiao go." "Let Di Xiao go?" Ningyu's expression froze, and his mind gradually became active. Ningyu had long known that Di Xiao was not simple, and that he had some secrets. However, his own strength was limited, and the human demon was on guard, so he could not study Di Xiao in a short time. Now that Liu Chuanji suddenly mentioned Di Xiao, Ningyu had to think about it. Yes, let He Jiming and Di Xiao go. Feeling that he had said too much, Liu Chuanji nodded and said, "Di Xiao is the last warrior besides He Jiming. You have to let him go." "Let Di Xiao go, it's not impossible, but I have a condition." Ningyu shrugged and said, "What condition?" Liu Chuanji asked, suppressing his anger and dissatisfaction. "You come from a high-level world, just give me a few million fairy crystals and a few dozen heavenly materials and earthly treasures." Ningyu waved his hand and said casually. Hearing this, Liu Chuanji was so angry that his nose almost became crooked. What a big tone. A few million fairy crystals was fine, but he also wanted a few dozen heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Was he out of his mind? "Ningyu, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't ask for too much, or I will definitely make you suffer." Seeing Ningyu ask for so many fairy crystals and heavenly materials and earthly treasures, He Jiming hurriedly roared. But when Liu Chuanji looked at He Jiming's voice stopped abruptly. In front of Ningyu, He Jiming could roar and be unbridled because he felt that Ningyu was afraid of Liu Chuanji. But in front of Liu Chuanji, He Jiming did not dare to behave atrociously. Although he had a trump card given to him by the sect elder, and even Liu Chuanji had to rely on him to obtain the origin energy in the celestial spirit realm. But it was better to be safe than sorry. What if Liu Chuanji also had a trump card? After all, Liu Chuanji was the young master of Sacred Divine Palace. It was understandable that he had a trump card with him when he personally descended to the celestial spirit realm. It was conceivable that if Liu Chuanji had a trump card that could obtain the origin energy, there would be no need for him to stay. Therefore, Liu Chuanji's every move affected He Jiming's state of mind, making him restless. "I don't have many fairy crystals on me, and I'm not used to carrying heavenly materials and earthly treasures with me." Liu Chuanji retracted his thoughts and shook his head gently. "How about this? I have an elixir on me. As long as you let He Jiming and Di Xiao go, I can give it to you." Chapter 1762. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The pill was silvery white. With the pill as the center, the surrounding space seemed to twist and warp. A small whirlpool formed in the air. A terrifying suction force emanated from the small whirlpool, sucking in all the surrounding yuan qi. The yuan qi that was sucked into the whirlpool didn't remain inside. Instead, it hovered in the air for a moment before entering the pill. This elixir can forcefully raise your cultivation from the initial phase to the pinnacle heavenly sovereign realm. Liu Chuanji waved the pill in his palm. Release Di Xiao and He Jiming, and I'll give you this pill. Words alone are no proof. How are you going to prove it? Ning Yu rolled his eyes. Me. Why would I lie to you? If you don't believe me, you can eat it first. With a cold snort, Liu Chuanji flicked his wrist and tossed the pill at Ning Yu. Whoosh. The pill was so fast that it reached Ning Yu in the blink of an eye. Seeing the pill flying towards him, Ning Yu's first reaction was to retreat. But when the human demon's words rang in his ears, he regained his composure. The pill is fine. You can swallow it. Although the human demon was inside the Tower of the Ascension, his senses were strong enough to determine the authenticity of the pill. The pill Liu Chuanji had taken out wasn't particularly precious in a higher plane. To Liu Chuanji, a pill that could raise a Sky Supreme's cultivation by several levels was as common as it could get. Generally speaking, Liu Chuanji wouldn't carry such a pill on him. The only reason Liu Chuanji had such a pill was because he'd brought it with him when he descended from a higher plane to support the immortal spirit realm's native experts. There were only 3 pills in total. Liu Chuanji didn't even frown when he gave one to Ning Yu. Fine. I'll believe you this once. Since the human demon had said there was no problem with the pill, Ning Yu didn't argue any further. In the next moment, Ning Yu raised his right hand and firmly grasped the pill in his hand. Catcher. After catching the pill, Ning Yu did not say anything harsh, but directly threw the pill into his mouth and chewed. Under the effect of Ning Yu's teeth, the pill was instantly split into 2 halves. The 2 halves of the pill quickly melted. Rich energy flowed into Ning Yu's body and filled every meridian. The energy first flowed through Ning Yu's tendons and meridians before entering Ning Yu's sea of consciousness along the tendons and meridians. Rumble. Just as the energy entered his sea of consciousness, Ning Yu felt as if his sea of consciousness was about to explode. Fortunately, the pain didn't last long before it returned to normal. Otherwise, Ning Yu would probably die from the pain. Drip. Drip. But even so, large beads of sweat still appeared on Ning Yu's forehead. Beads of sweat kept dripping, Ning Yu's nerves became tense. Because Ning Yu discovered that his sea of consciousness, which hadn't loosened for a long time, was starting to loosen. I'm about to reach the mid-stage Sky Supreme. Ning Yu was shocked. Previously, Ning Yu had fantasized about how he could reach the mid-stage Sky Supreme. Slowly accumulate, and then someone else imbue him. Ning Yu had thought of all these methods, but using a pill to raise his cultivation to the mid-stage Sky Supreme level was something Ning Yu had never considered. But the truth was right in front of him, and Ning Yu had no choice but to believe it. Senior Human Demon, please keep an eye on Liu Chuanji. I'm about to reach the mid-stage Sky Supreme level. Without any preparation, Ning Yu didn't dare to advance in front of Liu Chuanji. Only with the human demon's protection would Ning Yu dare to attempt to advance. Don't worry, before he rescues He Jiming, he won't make a move against you. The human demon was very open-minded. If a peak sage cultivator like Liu Chuanji wanted to make a move against Ning Yu, he would have done so long ago. There was no need to wait until now. Since Liu Chuanji wanted to save He Jiming, he definitely wouldn't make a move against Ning Yu before He Jiming was rescued. After receiving the human demon's reply, Ning Yu gathered all his soul energy and essence qi into his sea of consciousness. Charge! Ning Yu shouted in a low voice. Bang! A dull sound came from Ning Yu's sea of consciousness. Then, a terrifying aura surged out from Ning Yu's sea of consciousness and soared into the sky. Mid-stage Sky Supreme. At this moment, Ning Yu directly broke through the early-stage Sky Supreme realm and reached the mid-stage Sky Supreme realm. Crack! Along with the increase in his cultivation, Ning Yu's soul force also rose. Originally, Ning Yu's spiritual force had been at the peak of grade 8. Now that he was a mid-stage Sky Supreme, his spiritual force had also broken through to the early stage grade 9. I didn't expect to use this method to advance to the mid-stage Sky Supreme realm. Taking a deep breath, Ningyu forced himself to calm down. For Ningyu, even if he reached the mid-stage Sky Supreme realm, he still wouldn't be able to fight against an early-stage sage. According to Ningyu's speculations, unless he reached the late-stage Sky Supreme realm and improved his spiritual force, he would only be able to hold his own against an early-stage sage. However, Ningyu's strength had increased several-fold from the early stage to the mid-stage Sky Supreme realm. At the very least, Ningyu would have an overwhelming advantage against a half-step sage. Can you release He Jiming and Di Xiao now? Liu Chuanji stared at Ningyu and said coldly, I've given you the elixir and used it to advance to the mid-stage Sky Supreme realm. As long as you release He Jiming and Di Xiao, I guarantee that I'll hand over control of the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger to you. Stop. Ningyu waved his hand and said, I seem to remember someone saying that the elixir could raise my cultivation from the early stage Sky Supreme realm to the pinnacle Sky Supreme realm. Now, I've only reached the mid-stage Sky Supreme realm. Don't you have anything to say? Liu Chuanji's brows twitched when he heard Ningyu's words. He vaguely felt that something was amiss. That's right. Wasn't that silver-white elixir supposed to raise Ningyu's cultivation to the pinnacle Sky Supreme realm? Why did he only reach the mid-stage Sky Supreme realm? Could it be that the elixir was fake? Liu Chuanji didn't doubt that Ningyu had tampered with the elixir. With his powerful senses, he discovered that Ningyu had indeed devoured the elixir's energy. Under such circumstances, Liu Chuanji could only suspect that someone had given him a fake elixir. Being stared at by Ningyu's slightly mocking gaze, Liu Chuanji's expression turned ugly to the extreme. He was the young master of the sacred divine palace. Now, he was being mocked by an early-stage Sky Supreme. No, a mid-stage Sky Supreme. If this matter were to spread, how could he maintain his standing in the sacred divine palace? Forget it. As long as you give me 8 or 10 more of those elixirs, I'll release He Jiming and Di Xiao. Chapter 1763. 8 or 10 elixir pills? Are you sure you're not joking? Liu Chuanji's face was terrifyingly dark. If it wasn't to ensure the safety of He Jiming and Di Xiao, he would have attacked Ningyu long ago. Why would he wait until now? Now that Ningyu was being insatiable, his patience was almost exhausted. Once his patience was exhausted, he would definitely attack. Even if he had to give up on He Jiming and Di Xiao, he would kill Ningyu to vent his hatred. As if reading Liu Chuanji's mind, He Jiming flicked his wrist and a golden feather appeared in his hand. He Jiming clutched the golden feather tightly as if it was a life-saving straw. He shouted at Liu Chuanji, Young master, save me. Swoosh. He Jiming's sudden action made Liu Chuanji's originally dark face even more frighteningly gloomy. A threat. A naked threat. Ningyu and the rest didn't know what the golden feather was, but he knew it very well. The golden feather was the most crucial link to gain the upper hand in the fight for the celestial spirit source. It could be said that without the golden feather, even if there were a few more peak sage warriors, they wouldn't be able to get close to the celestial spirit source, let alone fight for it. The moment He Jiming took out the golden feather, Liu Chuanji knew what He Jiming was planning. He Jiming was afraid that he would kill him, so he used the golden feather as a shield. Taking a deep breath, Liu Chuanji suppressed the anger in his heart and said in a low voice, Don't worry, you are from the sacred divine palace, and I will not allow anyone from the sacred divine palace to be killed in front of me. Thank you, young master, thank you, young master. Receiving Liu Chuanji's affirmation, He Jiming hurriedly thanked him. As long as young master can ensure my safety, I will immediately give this golden feather to young master. I don't need it. You should keep it for yourself. Liu Chuanji shook his head, as if he didn't care about the golden feather. Ningyu obviously didn't care about the conversation between Liu Chuanji and He Jiming. At this moment, Ningyu's attention was completely attracted by the golden feather in He Jiming's hand. Although the golden feather did not look special on the surface, Ningyu knew very well that it must be something extremely important. Otherwise, Liu Chuanji wouldn't have revealed his killing intent in that instant. Thinking of this, Ningyu gradually came up with a countermeasure. I don't have 8 or 10 pills. I only have 2 pills left. At this moment, Liu Chuanji's cold voice rang out, I'll give you the 2 pills, and you release He Jiming and Di Xiao. No problem, but the condition is that you give me the control of the stern man and the smiling tiger. Ningyu nodded and said. Liu Chuanji did not continue to speak. Instead, he kicked the cold-looking man's butt and sent him flying towards Ningyu. Bang! Liu Chuanji's control of strength was very precise. The cold-looking man fell heavily in front of Ningyu and fell flat on his face. Xiu. Following closely behind the cold-looking man was a silver-white pill. The pill drew an arc in the air and landed steadily in front of Ningyu. Ningyu did not have any misgivings. He reached out with his right hand and grabbed the pill. After a brief inspection, Ningyu directly threw the pill into his storage ring. Although Ningyu did not seem to be afraid of Liu Chuanji tampering with the pill, he was actually quite worried. Just because the previous pill was fine didn't mean that the current pill was fine. Ningyu did not want to be schemed against by Liu Chuanji, so he could only throw the pill to the human demon for him to inspect. Senior human demon, are you controlling the stern man, or am I controlling him? After throwing the pill into the Tower of Yuzuan, Ningyu stared at the stern man in front of him and began to communicate with the human demon. Temporarily lock him up in the Tower of Yuzuan. I will seal his sea of consciousness to prevent him from causing trouble in the Tower of Yuzuan. The human demon seemed to have already considered this. Without any hesitation, he said, in addition, you can return He Jiming and Di Xiao to Liu Chuanji, but do not release your control over them. Understood. Ningyu nodded slightly, indicating that ginger was still spicier with age. It had to be said that the human demon's method was the best for now. In the next instant, with a thought, Ningyu opened his storage ring and sucked the stern-looking man into it. Ningyu did not want to expose the Tower of Yuzuan to Liu Chuanji, especially when the human demon was still in it. He Jiming belongs to you. Once everything was ready, Ningyu waved his hand at Liu Chuanji. I've already released my control over him. You'd better do that. Liu Chuanji snorted coldly and immediately waved both of his hands. He set up a small formation around He Jiming and sealed him. The reason why Liu Chuanji dared to do this after getting Ningyu's reply was because Liu Chuanji was afraid that if he rashly sealed He Jiming, Ningyu would kill He Jiming regardless of everything. After all, He Jiming was still under Ningyu's control. If things went wrong, Ningyu might make He Jiming self-destruct. Now that Liu Chuanji had sealed He Jiming, he no longer had to fear Ningyu's influence. Go. After the first transaction was successful, Liu Chuanji immediately kicked out Smiling Tiger and threw the second pill at Ningyu. Smack. Catching the pill, Ningyu casually tossed it into his storage ring. As for the Smiling Tiger, Ningyu looked him up and down before tossing him into his storage ring. Di Xiao, you go. Ningyu wasn't an unreasonable person. He tossed the Emperor Flute from the Tower of Yu into his spatial ring, then out of his spatial ring. Seeing Ningyu toss out the Di Xiao, Liu Chuanji's tensed nerves eased up a little. Waving his hands, Liu Chuanji also set up a small formation around the Di Xiao, thoroughly sealing it. All of you, stay here obediently. After sealing the Di Xiao, Liu Chuanji took out a gourd-shaped spatial artifact and stored the Di Xiao and He Jiming into it. Smack. Closing the lid, Liu Chuanji turned to look at Ningyu and coldly said, You're the first heavenly sovereign that dares to extort me. The first heavenly sovereign that extorted you? Ningyu's brows twitched in disappointment. Does that mean that a manifestation realm or saint realm cultivator has extorted you in the past? It's a pity that I couldn't be the first to do so. Sharp-tongued, Liu Chuanji shouted in a low voice. His figure immediately dashed out and dashed towards Ningyu. After saving He Jiming and the Di Xiao, Liu Chuanji no longer had any worries. Under such circumstances, Liu Chuanji naturally had to teach Ningyu a lesson and let Ningyu know what cruelty was. White-haired old man, and Haoping, go. Although he was provoking Liu Chuanji with words, Ningyu didn't dare to be careless in his actions. Ning Yu wasn't stupid enough to fight with a pinnacle Saint Realm cultivator. Chapter 1764. Swoosh, swoosh. Be it an Haoping or the white-haired old man, they had no other choice but to face it head-on. Both of them were under Ning Yu's control. If they didn't defend against Liu Chuanji, they would die for sure. If they did, they might have a chance to live. In the face of death, an Haoping and the white-haired old man were afraid. The two of them dashed out, one on the left and one on the right, charging at Liu Chuanji. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants to attack me. They're all seeking death. Liu Chuanji's target was originally Ning Yu, but when he saw an Haoping and the white-haired old man rushing towards him, he immediately changed his direction and decided to use an Haoping and the white-haired old man as practice. Boom! A huge battle broke out. In mid-air, Liu Chuanji was the main attacker while an Haoping and the white-haired old man defended. The result was as expected. Under Liu Chuanji's powerful attacks, an Haoping and the white-haired old man could only defend passively and retreat step by step. If this situation continued, it wouldn't be long before an Haoping and the white-haired old man were defeated. Being defeated wasn't scary. What was scary was that Liu Chuanji wanted to kill them and put them to death. Not long ago, Liu Chuanji only used a few minutes to defeat the cold-looking man and the smiling tiger. If Liu Chuanji wanted to kill an Haoping and the white-haired old man now, he would only need 10 minutes at most. Think of a way to lure Liu Chuanji over. The battle lasted for 3 minutes. The human demon's solemn voice suddenly rang in Ning Yu's ears. Hearing that, Ning Yu was slightly stunned. Then, he began to instruct an Haoping and the white-haired old man. Ning Yu knew that if the human demon dared to say something like that, it meant that he had a certain degree of confidence in dealing with Liu Chuanji. Since the situation was not favorable to them, they might as well fight to the death. As the saying went, a bicycle could become a motorcycle. If they didn't fight, everyone would die in the end. Although the human demon had swallowed the immortal ascension grass and raised his cultivation to late-stage sage. But even with the human demon, there was no way they could stop Liu Chuanji's powerful attacks. The only thing they could do now was to wait for an Haoping and the white-haired old man to lure Liu Chuanji over and let the human demon launch a sneak attack. If the sneak attack was successful, he could force Liu Chuanji to retreat temporarily. But if it failed, everyone would die together. Whoosh! Whoosh! After receiving Ning Yu's reply, an Haoping and the white-haired old man felt as if they had been granted amnesty. They hurriedly changed their direction and flew towards Ning Yu. Because an Haoping and the white-haired old man's movements were very obvious, Liu Chuanji frowned and faintly felt that something was wrong. Are you trying to sneak up on me? Liu Chuanji's heart stirred. He seemed to have guessed Ning Yu's plan. I'll pretend that I don't know and beat them at their own game. Where do you think you're going? With a loud shout, Liu Chuanji dashed toward an Haoping and the white-haired old man. An Haoping and the white-haired old man flew in front while Liu Chuanji chased after them. Liu Chuanji's speed of pursuit was not particularly fast. In fact, it could even be said to be very slow. He maintained the distance between him and the white-haired old man, but not to the extent that he would be left behind. 3 steps, 2 steps, now is the time. Seeing that Liu Chuanji was about to pass by Ning Yu, the human demon waved his hands and punched at Liu Chuanji with violent yuan qi. Ha ha ha, this is the moment I've been waiting for. The fist that suddenly shot out from Ning Yu's body did not cause Liu Chuanji the slightest bit of panic. On the contrary, Liu Chuanji laughed and counterattacked. Similarly, he punched out and collided with the fist in front of him. Crack! The 2 fists collided. A crisp sound rang out. Then, a slightly bloated body shot out from Ning Yu's body. Not good, it's a smiling tiger. The martial artist that suddenly shot out from Ning Yu's body caused Liu Chuanji's expression to change drastically. Liu Chuanji could not care less. He immediately retreated and quickly flew into the distance. At this point, if Liu Chuanji still did not know what Ning Yu's plan was, he would be a failure. Mutual destruction. Smiling Tiger's bloated body was not really bloated, but a sign of self-destruction. Liu Chuanji did not expect Ning Yu to be so decisive. The power of a late-stage Saint martial artist's self-destruction was unimaginable. Liu Chuanji did not want to be a living target here, so he immediately decided to leave. Anyway, He Jiming and Di Xiao had been rescued by him, so there was no need to stay. It was better to take this opportunity to leave the Emperor Divine Palace as soon as possible to avoid any trouble. After all, Ningyu could face a peak Saint martial artist with a Sky Supreme cultivation without any change of expression, which was enough to show that he was extraordinary. Whoosh! Liu Chuanji's figure flashed out. Liu Chuanji's speed was very fast. Almost in an instant, he tore the void and disappeared without a trace. Crack! Liu Chuanji disappeared, but Smiling Tiger did not stay idle. A crack appeared in the void, and Smiling Tiger directly entered it. Looking at Smiling Tiger's posture, it was obvious that he wanted to chase after Liu Chuanji. Of course, Human Demon was not particularly concerned about whether Smiling Tiger could catch up to Liu Chuanji. At this time, Human Demon had already rushed out of the Tower of Yuzuan. Smiling Tiger can't fool Liu Chuanji for long. We must leave in half an hour. The first thing Human Demon said after he came out was to remind Ningyu. Perhaps Liu Chuanji could not tell that Smiling Tiger's self-destruction was fake in a short time, but as time went on, he would definitely find some clues. At Liu Chuanji's level, if he thought about it carefully, he could understand many things. No need to wait for half an hour. Let's leave now and return to Giant Shield City. Ningyu did not want to face a terrifying martial artist like Liu Chuanji again. Since the Emperor Divine Palace's matter had come to an end, it was better to leave as soon as possible. The earlier they left, the safer they would be. Ningyu understood this very well. Alright, then let's not delay and leave immediately. Back to Giant Shield City. Not only did Ningyu not want to stay, but Human Demon also did not want to stay. After experiencing so many things in the Emperor Divine Palace, Human Demon had a vague feeling that things were not going well. So many sage martial artists had come to the immortal spirit realm from the higher planes, which meant that the plane barrier had loosened a little. Under such circumstances, there might be martial artists coming to kill him. Therefore, Human Demon's idea was very simple. Leave the Emperor Divine Palace first, then use a secret technique to completely conceal Ningyu's aura. As for where to go next, Human Demon decided to go to the Pill Completion Continent's Alchemy Union to find something important there. As long as he could find that thing, Human Demon was confident that he could suppress the energy seal in his body and raise his cultivation to the peak of the Sage Realm. Although Liu Chuanji had left, trouble still existed. Human Demon did not want Liu Chuanji to find Ningyu for revenge. He wanted to rely on his own strength to get rid of this obstacle. Thinking of this, Human Demon took the lead and flew out of the Emperor Divine Palace. All of you, come in. Seeing that Human Demon had left, Ningyu did not stay for long. He put Zhongqiong, the white-haired old man, and Haoping, Zhongkejuan, and the others into the Tower of Yuzu, then disappeared in a flash behind Human Demon. Buzz. Chapter 1766. Jushin had never been so angry before. Elder Tianji had said that he was not as good as Ningyu. Ninglu had also said that he was not as good as Ningyu. Even the Jin family sage who had interacted with him had said that he was not as good as Ningyu. Although he was angry, Jushin had already thought of a way to deal with Ningyu and those people who had mocked him. 2 hours. Elder Tianji would teach him the divination technique if he held on for another 2 hours. Once he really mastered the divination technique, he would become a VIP in the Sky Fiend region and even in the Celestial Spirit region. Jushin was not worried that Elder Tianji would go back on his word. Elder Tianji had always been a man of his word. If he said that he would teach him the divination technique, he would definitely do it. Of course. The condition was that he had to wait for another 2 hours. Jushin had waited for so many years. The last 2 hours was naturally not a problem. Xie, contact the Jin family sage. Although Jushin had already thought of a way to deal with Ningyu, Jushin was still a little worried at this time. After thinking for a moment, Jushin said to Xie, you only have one mission, which is to guard the gate of Giant Shield City. As long as Ningyu dares to appear, stall him. No matter what, you have to stall him for 2 hours. If one did not think far ahead, one would have immediate worries. Elder Tianji's condition was very simple. If Ning Yu did not appear in the hall within 2 hours, he would teach him the divination technique. Jushin was very smart. To ensure that Ning Yu would not appear in the hall within the stipulated time, he felt that he had to send Xie and the Jin family sage. If not for the fact that he was afraid that Ning Lu and the rest would resist, he would have even sent Guo Liang. After all, one more person meant one more layer of insurance. Swoosh. After Xie left, Jushin leaped up and landed on the chair at the head of the hall. He sat down and closed his eyes to rest. 2 hours wasn't short, but it wasn't long either. Jushin felt that he should not be overly worried. He should remain calm. Jushin was calm, but Ning Lu and the others in the hall were not. They were even very anxious. Ning Lu and the others were anxious, not for the safety of Ning Yu, but for their own safety. Ning Yu had the terrifying human devil sage by his side, so his life was naturally not in danger. But they were different. If Ning Yu did not rush back with the human demon within 2 hours, they would really be finished. Come back quickly. Ning Lu wasn't the only one praying for Ning Yu's quick return. Everyone else in the hall was also secretly praying for Ning Yu's quick return. Praying was praying, and no one spoke. For a moment, the atmosphere in the hall became gloomy. Ning Yu knew nothing about the changes in Giant Shield City. Not long after they parted ways, Ning Yu headed for Giant Shield City without stopping. Because he wanted to see Ning Lu and the Dark Emperor as soon as possible, as well as to arrange Supreme Hall's next move as soon as possible, Ning Yu did not stop at all on the way. The originally 2 to 3 hours journey was forcefully compressed by Ning Yu to 1.5 hours. I'm finally here. Looking at the huge city not far ahead, Ning Yu let out a long sigh, revealing a relieved expression. The earlier he returned to Giant Shield City, the earlier he could do many things. How could it not be relaxed? However, Ning Yu was very clear that he was pressed for time. He had to arrange everything as soon as possible and then head for the Alchemy Union. The reason why the human devil was so anxious to go to the Alchemy Union was because he wanted to find a way to suppress the energy seal in his body. Ning Yu more or less understood the energy seal. He did not want the human devil to mess around. As he pondered, Ning Yu's footsteps did not stop. Very soon, Ning Yu arrived at the city gates of Giant Shield City. Stop! The moment Ning Yu's foot stepped into Giant Shield City, a cold voice rang out beside his ear. Xie. Slightly startled, Ning Yu retracted his right leg without batting an eyelid. Xie's cold reprimand caused Ning Yu's mind to become active. Ning Yu was not that kind of fledgling who was ignorant of the world's affairs. On the contrary, Ning Yu had lived 2 lives and had experienced many things. Previously, Xie had been very polite to him. He had even chased after him for medicinal pills and listened to everything he said. Since Xie dared to use this kind of tone to speak to him now, it meant that the chronic illness in Xie's body had already been resolved. As expected. Thinking of this, Ning Yu's gaze shifted towards Xie, who was not far away. Ning Yu's heart skipped a beat as soon as he saw it. Although he had guessed that the chronic illness in Xie's body might have been resolved, when he really saw that Xie was safe and sound, Ning Yu was still very shocked. Where's your friend? Xie's gaze was behind Ning Yu, and he used his perception to explore the surroundings. After a while, Xie retracted his perception. Staring at Ning Yu, Xie asked, why didn't he come back with you? Although Xie and Guo Liang had defected to Jushin, they were not stupid. When Ning Lu had returned, he had brought with him several Peak Sky Supreme Martialists, such as Jiao Zhengde and Zhong Yi. They could not understand the truth from Ning Lu, but they knew what had happened at the entrance of the Saint Grade Yuan crystal mine from Jiao Zhengde and the others. Especially when they learned that Ning Yu had been taken away by a Saint Realm Martialist, Xie and Guo Liang started to feel conflicted. In the end, they should completely defer to Jushin and the Jin family. They should feign ignorance and wait for Ning Yu and that saint to return before making a decision. After some consideration, Xie and Guo Liang decided to wait for Ning Yu to return first. Now that Ningyu had returned to Giant Shield City alone, Xie would definitely ask him about it. We separated on the way. Xie's nervous expression allowed Ningyu to roughly guess the problem. However, there was no need for Ningyu to lie to Xie. So what if he told him that the demon wasn't here? In the storage ring, and Haoping, the white-haired elder, and even Zhongqiong could come out and sweep the entire Giant Shield City. If he was not worried about the safety of Ninglu and the Dark Emperor, Ningyu would have let Zhongqiong out long ago. Why would he waste time talking nonsense with Xie here? Phew. Hearing Ningyu's reply, Xie heaved a sigh of relief. The next moment, Xie's expression became extremely sinister. He said to Ningyu coldly, "Now you have two choices. 1. Stay here obediently for half an hour. After half an hour, someone will naturally come to deal with you. 2. Die." At this moment, Xie completely exploded. Previously, when Ningyu had something on him, Xie had no choice but to listen to Ningyu's orders. Now that the opportunity was right in front of him, Xie had to get back at him no matter what. Moreover, the Saint of the Jin family hidden in the void did not intervene, which meant that the Saint of the Jin family had tacitly approved of his behavior. In a state of anger, Xie completely released his half-sage aura and pressed down on Ningyu. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to completely crush Ningyu. Chapter 1767. Half-Step Saint's Aura Pressure. Ningyu didn't take Xie's aura pressure to heart. With his current mid-sky supreme cultivation, he didn't feel any pressure from a half-step saint. After reaching the middle phase Heavenly Sovereign Realm, Ningyu's soul force had also reached the initial phase 9th grade Sovereign Realm. His perception and awareness had also improved. Even if Xie were to fight Ningyu now, he wouldn't be able to defeat Ningyu. Seeing Ningyu standing there without any resistance, Xie's brows couldn't help but furrow. What's going on? Could it be that Ningyu is pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? Is the human demon that claims to exterminate everything hiding in his body? It was understandable for Xie to have such thoughts. After all, he didn't believe that a mid-sky supreme could resist his aura pressure. If someone said such words in front of him, he would probably give that person a slap to wake them up. No, he's trying to resist my aura pressure with his own strength. Soon enough, Xie realized what the problem was. Ningyu wasn't trying to rely on external forces to resist his aura pressure. Instead, he was trying to rely on his own strength to resist his aura pressure. Xie was furious and shocked when he realized this. He was furious that Ningyu was looking down on him and wanted to rely on his own strength to resist his aura pressure. He was shocked that Ningyu didn't seem to be panicking at all. Ningyu's calmness had far surpassed any cultivator of the same generation. Even some of the older generation couldn't be so calm. "I want to see what you're capable of." Xie clenched his fists and stared at Ningyu. Although he didn't believe that Ningyu could resist his aura pressure on the surface, Xie started to have doubts in his heart. The more Xie interacted with Ningyu, the more he could feel how terrifying Ningyu was. The first time he met Ningyu's cultivation was extremely low. He hadn't even reached the Earth Sovereign Realm. How long had it been? Ningyu had actually reached the mid-stage Heavenly Supreme Realm. At this rate, it wouldn't take long for Ningyu to break through to the half-step saint realm. Xie didn't doubt Ningyu's combat strength in the slightest. He believed that so long as Ningyu advanced to the half-saint realm, then Ningyu would definitely be able to instantly kill him. Therefore, Xie wanted to know if Ningyu could resist the pressure of his half-saint aura. The pressure of a half-step saint's aura was getting closer and closer to Ningyu. As for Ningyu, he was still standing in the same place without any change in his expression. Kai. However, this situation did not last long. In practically an instant, Xie's half-saint aura had arrived before Ningyu. The terrifying aura collided with Ningyu's aura, causing sizzling sounds to resound. This old fox, Xie, is really strong. As soon as the two auras collided, Ningyu discovered how powerful Xie was. Although Xie's cultivation was at the half-saint realm, his aura was infinitely close to the saint realm. In other words, As long as Siezedi's vitality could reach the Saint Realm, then he would have a high chance of advancing to the Saint Realm. Of course, it was easier said than done. Otherwise, with the 100 Flowers Palace's foundation, Siezei would have advanced to the Saint Realm a long time ago. If I rely on my own aura, something might happen. I have to make sure that it's foolproof. After thinking about it, Ningyu decided to use Zhongqiong's aura. However, even if he decided to use Zhongqiong's aura, Ningyu still had to be careful. There was no other reason. Just now, when Siezei displayed the aura of the half-saint realm, Ningyu noticed that the void around Siezei was trembling a little. Although the trembling was weak, Ningyu had to be cautious. By now, Ningyu could basically conclude that Siezei was just sent out as cannon fodder. There must be someone behind him. As for whether there was one or two martial artists hidden in the void and what their cultivation was, Ningyu had no idea. Without knowing anything, he naturally couldn't expose An Haoping and the white-haired old man who were at the late Saint Realm. Boom. Zhongqiong didn't dare to disobey Ningyu's orders. Since Ningyu asked him to display his aura, he could only display his aura honestly. Moreover, he only displayed the aura of the early Saint Realm according to Ningyu's request. Even so, the result of the aura of the early Saint Realm against Siezedi's aura of the half-Saint Realm could be imagined. Boom. A huge rumbling sound rang out. Then, the two auras merged into one and rushed towards Siezei. Damn it. The sudden change was obviously beyond Siezedi's expectations. His expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly retreated. Puff. It was obviously too late for Siezei to retreat at this time. The combined aura instantly arrived in front of Siezei and fiercely bombarded his chest under Siezedi's horrified gaze. The pain from his chest made Siezedi's throat taste sweet, and he directly spat out a large mouthful of dark red blood. Siezedi's face became extremely pale as he spat out the blood. Obviously, Siezedi's injuries were not light. Who the hell are you? Hurry up and come out. Siezei struggled to get up from the ground and stared at Ningyu. He said fiercely, hiding behind Ningyu to attack, "What kind of hero are you?" Hiss. Before Siezei could finish his words, he hastily shut his mouth and sucked in a breath of cold air. Due to the violent roar, Siezei felt a heart-wrenching pain in his chest. Do you know how many people are hiding in the void? Ningyu ignored Siezei's roar. At this time, he began to communicate with Zhongqiong in the storage ring. Zhongqiong was the powerhouse of the Zhong family responsible for protecting Zhongkejuan, and his level of concealment was very high. Just now, he asked him to attack was also to find out how many people were hiding in the void. Only one, Zhongqiong said cautiously, and his cultivation is at the early stage of the Sage Realm. Early stage of the Sage Realm? And there is only one. Ningyu was a little stunned, and even suspected that Zhongqiong's detection was wrong. To be on the safe side, Ningyu decided to let Zhongqiong investigate again. After all, Ningyu's original intention was to capture all the martial artists in the void, and he did not want any mistakes. Oh no. Just as Ningyu was about to let Zhongqiong investigate again, his expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly retreated. Rumble. Ningyu only took a few steps back, and the ground where he originally stood suddenly caved in. The huge pit made Ningyu's face extremely gloomy. Fortunately, he was already prepared, and he was highly focused. Otherwise, just this huge crater alone would be enough to make him suffer a lot. Zhongqiong, I give you 3 minutes to take down that martial artist who only dares to hide in the void. Otherwise, come and see me with your head. Ningyu's expression was cold, and even a little sinister. Originally, Ningyu's idea was to capture Siezei first, then slowly interrogate him, and wait until he understood the situation in Giant Shield City before making his move. Chapter 1768. Swoosh. Hearing Ningyu's words, Zhongqiong did not dare to hesitate and immediately rushed out of the storage ring. Since Zhongqiong had extremely high attainments in concealment, as soon as he came out of the storage ring, he found the saint of the Jin family hidden in the void. After discovering the saint of the Jin family, Zhongqiong directly integrated into the void and fought with the saint of the Jin family. Ning Yu only gave Zhong Qiong 3 minutes. It was still a little difficult for Zhong Qiong to capture an early-stage saint in 3 minutes. Swoosh. Since he had handed the saint of the Jin family to Zhong Qiong, Ning Yu did not care about it anymore. His figure flashed and Ning Yu rushed toward Xie Ziyi. Damn it. Looking at Ning Yu approaching him, Xie Ziyi cursed in his heart. He immediately turned around and rushed toward the giant shield city. Xie Ziyi had been seriously injured in the impact of the aura just now. Xie Ziyi's cultivation had reached the semisage level, while Ning Yu was only at the middle stage Sky Supreme. But in the case of injury, Xie Ziyi could not guarantee that he could defeat Ning Yu. In other words, Xie Ziyi did not dare to take the risk. He was afraid that Ning Yu still had a backup plan. There was only one thought in Xie Ziyi's mind, which was to return to the City Lord's mansion as soon as possible, find Jushin and Guoliang, and let them deal with Ning Yu. As for himself, he would look for a chance to escape. However, dreams were plentiful, but reality was harsh. How could Ning Yu let such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity slip through his fingers? Under Ning Yu's all-out attack, Xie Ziyi was only able to run a dozen meters before Ning Yu caught up with him. It's hard to say who will win and who will lose. Since there was no way out, Xie Ziyi might as well fight to the death. Along with the cold words coming out of his mouth, Xie Ziyi clenched his fists. 2 fists with violent primordial qi blasted toward Ning Yu one after the other. The first fist blasted toward Ning Yu's head. The second fist blasted toward Ning Yu's heart. 2 simultaneous attacks. You're about to die, yet you still want to resist. In the face of Xie Ziyi's resistance, Ning Yu's eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness. In the beginning, Ning Yu had wanted to spare Xie Ziyi's life. But now, Ning Yu had changed his focus and decided to kill Xie Ziyi. In some things, being kind to your enemy is being cruel to yourself. This was also the reason why Ning Yu refused to let his enemies go. Kill. In short, if you want to kill me, then be prepared to be killed by me. Cut the heavens. With a flick of his wrist, Ning Yu took out the black dragon sword and swung it repeatedly. Voila! In an instant, 2 sword lights flashed out and attacked Xie Ziyi's palms. Not good. Xie Ziyi panicked when he saw the 2 sword lights flying towards him. In his panic, Xie Ziyi immediately withdrew his fist and wanted to retreat. However, it was too late for Xie Ziyi to retreat now. He withdrew his right palm, but his left hand was exposed to the attack range of the sword ray. Catcher. Ah! The next moment, a clear sound accompanied by a pig-like shriek rang out near the giant shield city's city gate tower. I surrender, I surrender. With his left arm chopped off, Xie Ziyi's already weak body became even weaker. In this desperate situation, Xie Ziyi hurriedly raised his right hand and chose to surrender. What exactly happened in Giant Shield City? Tell me the truth. Ning Yu jumped to Xie Ziyi's side and placed the black dragon sword on Xie Ziyi's neck. He said coldly, if you dare to lie to me, you should know the consequences. I was forced. It was all Jushin who forced me. This has nothing to do with me. With the black dragon sword on his neck, Xie Ziyi showed an extremely panicked expression and hurriedly explained, I can bring you to Jushin. As long as you can control Jushin, the crisis in Giant Shield City will naturally be resolved. Jushin. Ning Yu frowned slightly. Jushin is Elder Tianji's disciple. Right now, Giant Shield City is in his hands. Xie Ziyi hurriedly said, all your friends are in the main hall of the City Lord residence. Jushin sent me and the Jin family's saint to block you. His goal is to prevent you from appearing in the main hall. Elder Tianji? Prevent me from appearing in the main hall? Hearing Xie Ziyi's explanation, Ning Yu was even more puzzled. He knew of Elder Tianji, but he did not know much about his disciple, Ning Yu. Moreover, although he did not know what Elder Tianji's cultivation level was, Ning Yu knew that Elder Tianji was definitely not a saint. Since Elder Tianji was not a saint, then his disciple's cultivation level would naturally not be high. His cultivation level was not high, but he could control Giant Shield City. Clearly, there was someone behind Jushin. Seeing Ning Yu's puzzled expression, Xie Ziyi secretly wiped his sweat. His tense nerves relaxed a little. As long as Ning Yu did not kill him, everything would be fine. Jushin would definitely know about the earth-shattering battle that had taken place here. Xie Ziyi was very clear about his position. Delay. As long as he could delay until Jushin arrived with Guoliang, there was a high chance that he would survive. How many saints have come from the Jin family? Ning Yu did not care about what Xie Ziyi was thinking. He continued to ask. According to Ning Yu's previous knowledge, among the 3 branches of the Jin family in the Thousand Leaves Empire, the highest cultivation level was only a Sky Supreme. There was not even a half-saint. Now that an early-stage saint had suddenly appeared, how could Ning Yu not be shocked? I'm not sure exactly how many have come. I only know that only one early-stage saint has come in contact with us in the past few days. As Xie Ziyi spoke, he carefully paid attention to the changes in Ning Yu's expression. Once Ning Yu revealed any killing intent, Xie Ziyi would immediately escape. Even if there was a black dragon sword on his neck, Xie Ziyi would not hesitate. Could it be that the Jin family can also get in touch with high-level planes? Ning Yu frowned. He vaguely felt that things had become complicated. In the Sky Demon region, the Jin family was not particularly powerful. There was not even a half-saint in the family. Now that even the Jin family had a saint-level expert, didn't that mean that other families might also have a large number of saints? My cultivation is only at the middle stage of Sky Supreme. It seems that I have to speed up my cultivation. Ning Yu secretly made up his mind to immediately go to the Alchemy Union as soon as he settled the matter in the Giant Shield City. It was said that the city where the Alchemy Union was located had a few holy cultivation grounds. Cultivating there would be twice the results with half the effort. As the enemy's cultivation increased, Ning Yu's sense of danger became stronger and stronger. Die. As Ning Yu was thinking, he became a little distracted. Seeing that Ning Yu was distracted, Xie Ziyi felt that his chance had come. Just as Ning Yu was distracted, Xie Ziyi's right fist hit the handle of the Black Dragon Sword. The Black Dragon Sword was blown away from Ning Yu's hand. Ha ha ha, still not dead yet. Xie Ziyi couldn't help but laugh wildly as he separated the Black Dragon Sword from Ning Yu's hand. This was because Xie Ziyi felt that Ning Yu would definitely die. Chapter 1769. I gave you face, but you don't want it. Before Xie Ziyi's fist could hit Ning Yu snorted and raised his right leg to kick Xie Ziyi's fist. The fist met the kick. The result was obvious. Crack. With a crisp sound, Xie Ziyi was sent flying backward. Xie Ziyi's confidence and hope were sent flying along with him. Xie Ziyi would never have thought that Ning Yu would set him up. Xie Ziyi didn't understand. If Ning Yu wanted to kill him, he would have done it long ago. Why did he wait until now? Die. Xie Ziyi might never be able to figure out the answer to this question. Controlling the Black Dragon Sword, Ning Yu's figure flashed and stabbed Xie Ziyi's heart. With his heart pierced, Xie Ziyi died on the spot without any struggle. Swish. Although Xie Ziyi was dead, his Yuan spirit rushed out of his body, trying to survive. Go in. Ning Yu had even killed Xie Ziyi, so how could he let his primordial spirit escape? With a thought, Ning Yu took out the 10,000 spirit sacred flag and stored Xie Ziyi's Yuan spirit inside. Ning Yu kept Xie Ziyi's Yuan spirit so that his Yuan spirit battle body could devour it. The Yuan spirit battle body's cultivation was at the peak of the 9th grade Earth Supreme level. His body was in Qianhao's, and his left arm was the arm of a sage. As long as his Yuan spirit battle body devoured a few powerful Yuan spirits, his cultivation would break through to the Sky Supreme level. The Yuan spirit battle body's power was not only reflected in his cultivation, but also in his control over his Yuan spirit. Once his Yuan spirit battle body broke through to the Sky Supreme level, he could easily defeat the Yuan spirit of an initial stage sage. Ning Yu's current cultivation was at the mid-Sky Supreme level. Normally, he could only defeat or kill a half-saint. But if he joined forces with a Sky Supreme, the Yuan spirit battle body would deal with the Yuan spirit, while Ning Yu would deal with the physical body. In that case, their combined combat power could be compared to that of an initial stage sage. This was also the reason why Ning Yu kept Xie Ziyi's Yuan spirit. Whoosh. Just as Ningyu kept Xiezi's primordial spirit into the Thousand Ghosts sacred flag, Zhongqiong flew over with the Jin clan's saint. Bang! After throwing the saint of the Jin clan in front of Ningyu, Zhongqiong said, "I brought him here." "Very good. Seal all of his meridians and bring him to the main hall of the City Lord Mansion." Ningyu nodded at Zhongqiong, then immediately moved and flew towards the main hall of the City Lord's mansion. Catcher. City Lord Residence Main Hall. First place. Jushin's expression became extremely hideous. From the moment Xie was killed, Jushin already knew. The reason why Jushin did not leave the main hall was partly because he believed in the strength of the Jin clan's sage. On the other hand, the agreement he had with the Elder of Heavenly Secrets only had 10 minutes left. After 10 minutes, according to the agreement, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets would teach him the divination art. Under such circumstances, Jushin naturally chose to take a gamble. "Guo Liang, go stand guard outside the City Lord's mansion." He slapped the chair beneath him, shattering it into pieces. Jushin suddenly stood up and said coldly, "No matter what, don't let Ningyu enter the City Lord's mansion. Otherwise, I'll see you with your head." "Understood." Guo Liang's face was filled with reluctance, but he still nodded and turned to leave the main hall. Ha ha ha. Seeing that Guo Liang had left the main hall, the Dark Emperor threw his head back and laughed. He said to Jushin, "When Ningyu comes, you'll be waiting to die." Noisy. Jushin raised his right hand and fanned out. Rumble. A huge gust of wind quickly blasted in the direction of the Dark Emperor. Fortunately, the Dark Emperor dodged in time. Otherwise, Jushin's attack would be enough to make the Dark Emperor suffer. Jushin's cultivation might be a few levels lower than the Dark Emperor's. However, the Dark Emperor could only dodge Jushin's attack. The reason for this situation was that the entire main hall of the City Lord's mansion had been set up into a huge formation by an expert. Although Jushin's cultivation was not high, he controlled this huge formation. As long as he willed it, everyone in the main hall would suffer. The reason why Jushin did not kill the Dark Emperor and the others was because of his agreement with Old Man Heaven's Secret. Old Man Heaven's Secret had said that everyone related to Ningyu could not die. Even if one of them died, he would not impart the Heaven's Secret art to Jushin. Under such circumstances, how would Jushin dare to make a move? Buzz. Buzz. Just as Jushin was about to attack the Dark Emperor for a second time, a crystal ball on his body suddenly let out a buzzing sound. When he heard this sound, Jushin's expression changed drastically as he hurriedly took out the crystal ball. Sticking the crystal ball to his ear and listening, Jushin's heart sank to the bottom. How is this possible? How could this be? The information transmitted from the crystal ball caused Jushin's pupils to constrict and he looked as though he had aged more than 10 years. This information was simply too shocking for Jushin. The crystal ball was the medium through which Jushin got in touch with the Jin family. The Jin family had sent their sage to Giant Shield City to support Jushin with only one goal, to obtain the Heaven's Secret art. But now, not only did they not obtain the Heaven's Secret art, even the sage they sent was killed. Naturally, this hatred would be vented on Jushin. The Jin family's sage is being controlled. Bring Old Man Heaven's Secret into the main hall and use the formation to defend it. You must hold them off for 3 hours. Recalling the information he had received from the crystal ball, Jushin felt as though all his energy had been sucked out and he was flustered. No, I have to activate the entire formation immediately and defend it with my life. Taking a deep breath, Jushin contacted Guo Liang and had him bring Old Man Heaven's Secret over. At the same time, he took out the item given to him by the Jin family and activated the entire formation. Even though Jushin was in charge of the formation, looking like he was the only one who could do it. However, it could not be denied that the formation had not been fully activated. Only a portion of it had been activated. The reason why Jushin did not fully activate the formation was because he felt that things were in the bag. It was fine as long as it could trap Ningyu's friends. From the looks of it, he had to fully activate the formation. After all, even the Jin family's sage was being controlled. This meant that Ningyu must have brought a sage with him. Rumble. With a loud rumble, The formation in the main hall was completely activated by Jushin. This formation can even stop a mid-stage sage. Let's see what you can do to me. After activating the formation, Jushin moved to the exit of the main hall. He looked into the distance and said coldly, "Everyone says that I'm not as good as you. Today, let's determine the winner." Bang! As soon as Jushin's cold words fell, a figure dashed in front of him. The sound of a body hitting the wall could be heard. Jushin looked at the familiar figure on the ground in front of him and his expression became extremely ferocious. Guo Liang. The martial artist on the ground was none other than Guo Liang. Russell. Jushin looked up. Chapter 1770. Looking at the figure at the front, Jushin could not help but clench his fists tightly. His expression became extremely ferocious. Although he had never seen Ningyu before, Jushin knew that the skinny cultivator in front of him was Ningyu. Jushin's gaze did not linger on Ningyu for too long. Soon, it shifted to the cultivator beside Ningyu. What he saw caused Jushin's heart to sink to the bottom of the valley. Mid-stage sage. Zhongqiang did not hide his aura, so Jushin could tell that he was a mid-stage sage. As for the Jin family's sage that Zhongqiang was dragging, Jushin did not pay attention to him. Calm down. The experts from the Jin family said that the array can withstand the impact of a mid-stage sage. Jushin tried his best to calm himself down. He was standing at the entrance of the hall. With the hall behind him and the array, Jushin was confident that he could withstand the mid-stage sage. "Save me." At this moment, Guo Liang crawled up from the ground with difficulty and shouted at Jushin, "Pull me into the hall." Guo Liang roared as he slowly crawled towards the hall. The distance between them became the most insurmountable distance for Guo Liang. Jushin was completely unmoved by Guo Liang's cry for help. At this moment, Jushin's attention was completely on Ningyu and Zhongqiang. If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. That was Jushin's strategy. For the long-term goal, Jushin needed to delay for 3 hours. For the short-term goal, Jushin only needed to delay for 10 minutes. That was because after 10 minutes, Old Man Tianji would teach him the divination art. The reason why he resisted Old Man Tianji and chose to cooperate with the Jin family was to obtain the divination art. "Don't even think about scheming against me." Jushin's expression was cold. He made up his mind to leave immediately after obtaining the divination art. At that time, he could make Ningyu and the rest fight with the Jin family. As the saying went, when the sandpiper and clam fight, the fisherman benefits. Stop. Although Jushin had his own plans, his attention did not leave Ningyu and Zhongqiang. Seeing that Ningyu was about to move closer to the hall, Jushin immediately said coldly, "If you dare to take another step forward, I guarantee that I will kill everyone in the hall." As he spoke, Jushin turned slightly to the side, exposing the entire hall to Ningyu. Whoosh! Ningyu's gaze only moved slightly around the great hall before he quickly retracted it and rested on Jushin. "What do you want?" As he already knew about the situation in the hall through Xie, Ningyu was not too shocked when he saw the Dark Emperor and the others trapped in the hall. Instead, he said calmly, "Tell me your conditions." "My condition?" Jushin hadn't expected Ningyu to be so calm. His lips curled up into a smirk as he said coldly, "Aren't you awesome? Cripple his own cultivation. Then enter the main hall." Bullshit. When the Dark Emperor heard Jushin's hooligan-like words, he immediately shouted, "If you dared to kill us, you would have done it a long time ago. Why wait until now? I want to see if you have the courage to kill us. Do you have guts? I'll start with you and let you see if I have the courage or not." Jushin was agitated by the Dark Emperor to the point of becoming irritable. His originally calm face became extremely sinister. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, Jushin's figure shot out. His target was the Dark Emperor. The Dark Emperor's expression did not change as he faced Jushin, who was charging at him. He had no intention of retreating. When Jushin was 3 meters away from the Dark Emperor said indifferently, "You have to think this through. If you kill me, you can forget about obtaining the divination art forever." Whoosh! The Dark Emperor's words seemed to contain terrifying power, causing Jushin to stop in midair. "You're threatening me." Clenching his fists, Jushin furiously glared at the Dark Emperor. Everyone who threatens me will not have a good ending. If you think I'm threatening you, then so be it. The Dark Emperor shrugged and leaned lazily against the chair, looking like he didn't care at all. Crack. The Dark Emperor's actions made Jushin's nose turn crooked. But for the divination art, Jushin decided to let the Dark Emperor off. I'll deal with you later. Glaring at the Dark Emperor, Jushin returned to the entrance of the hall and stretched out a finger towards Ningyu. There's a limit to my patience. 10 minutes, I'll give you 10 minutes to consider. You have to make a decision in 10 minutes. Do you think that I'm a fool? Ningyu pointed at his own nose as he stared at Jushin as if he was looking at a fool and said in disdain, "You're not even a heavenly sovereign, and I have a middle-phase Saint Realm cultivator on my side. Do you think that you can escape? Forget it, I don't want to talk nonsense with you, Zhongqiong." Shrugging, Ningyu waved his hand at Zhongqiong and said, "Go break open the formation and bring Jushin here." Ningyu was not a fool. He already knew about Jushin's plan from Xie. The reason why Ningyu did not let Zhongqiong rush to the main hall immediately was because he was worried that the Jin clan's saint was hiding in the surroundings. After all, there was a seal in the mind of the early-stage sage from the Jin family. Once his memories were forcefully devoured, he would self-destruct. The words of the Dark Emperor just now allowed Ningyu to roughly determine the situation in front of him. Jushin didn't dare to kill the Dark Emperor and the others. Since that was the case, Ningyu no longer stood by and watched. He ordered Zhongqiong to break the array and capture Jushin alive. Although the white-haired old man and An Haoping, the two late-stage Sage Realm martial artists, as well as the cold-looking man, the late-stage Sage Realm martial artist, were in the storage ring, Ningyu was worried that the Jin family would send even more powerful martial artists. More martial artists would come over. To be on the safe side, Ningyu immediately asked Zhongqiong to take action as soon as he got some information from the Dark Emperor. After all, Zhongqiong's cultivation was at the mid-stage Sage Realm. As soon as he took action, he immediately unleashed powerful spells that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. All kinds of spells finally gathered in one place and fiercely bombarded the entrance of the main hall, where Jushin was. Rumble. An earth-shattering sound rang out. Although Zhongqiong's target was the entrance of the main hall, the entire main hall was uprooted. Zhongqiong's grasp of strength was very precise. His attack only tore open the main hall and did not affect the surrounding buildings. Ha ha ha. After Zhongqiong's first attack, Jushin's unscrupulous voice resounded in this area. Jushin had a reason to be excited and unscrupulous. Because Zhongqiong's all-out attack did not break the formation. Even the foundation of the formation was not shaken. Jushin looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. Then, he hooked his finger at Ningyu and said, "I'm standing here. Come over if you have the ability." Chapter 1771. Creak. As soon as Jushin's arrogant words fell, the door of the house he was staring at was slowly pushed open. A white-bearded old man walked out of the house. Elder Tianji. The white-bearded old man was none other than the old fart that Jushin had mentioned, Elder Tianji. As soon as Elder Tianji walked out of the house, Ningyu's heart skipped a beat. In the Sky Demon region, even in the Immortal Spirit region, Elder Tianji's name was very famous. Before meeting Elder Tianji, Ningyu had thought that Elder Tianji was very mysterious and powerful. But now, Ningyu realized that Elder Tianji looked very kind. As for his cultivation, Ningyu could not tell what Elder Tianji's cultivation was. Is Elder Tianji not a cultivator? As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Ningyu tossed it aside. After all, Elder Tianji was an honored guest of countless powerful forces. It was very difficult for many to meet him, so he must not be weak. Zhongqiong, can you tell what Elder Tianji's cultivation is? Ningyu asked Zhongqiong in a low voice. I can't tell. Zhongqiong shook his head. At first glance, Elder Tianji is not a cultivator. But if you look closely, you will realize that Elder Tianji is unfathomable. Unfathomable? Frowning, Ningyu secretly became cautious. If the Elder of Heavenly Secrets could calculate, could it be that all of this was within his grasp? If that was the case, then Elder Tianji was too scary. So scary that Ning Yu did not want to have anything to do with him. Old bastard, this formation can even block a warrior at the intermediate stage of the Sage Realm. How can Ning Yu break in? Seeing Elder Tianji come out, Jushin said proudly. You always say that I am not as good as Ning Yu. Now, I'll show you who is the real genius. You are a genius. Elder Tianji moved and stopped a few steps away from Jushin. You are indeed a genius to be able to reach the Earth Supreme Realm at your age. Cut the crap. I don't need you to tell me that I'm a genius, Jushin said viciously. You only need to teach me the divination art. Everything else has nothing to do with you. What's the hurry? Although you are a genius, Ning Yu is a genius among geniuses. Lord Tianji rolled his eyes. Ning Yu is younger than you, but his cultivation has already reached the mid-heavenly supreme realm. If I remember correctly, when you were the same age as Ning Yu, your cultivation should have only been at the mortal sovereign realm, right? Jushin's complexion turned ashen at the Elder of Heavenly Secrets' words. What he hated the most was the Elder of Heavenly Secrets comparing him to Ning Yu. No matter how he looked at it, he had won. It was impossible for Ning Yu to break into the array in the remaining time. Moreover, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets still said that Ning Yu had left. How could he not be angry? How could he not be angry? In his rage, Jushin said coldly, I don't want to argue with you. In any case, I just want to say one thing for you. Do you intend to impart the divination art to me? Don't worry. I will definitely fulfill my promise. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets' expression was calm and did not change in the slightest. After saying this, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets immediately turned around and walked toward Ning Yu. As he watched the Elder of Heavenly Secrets walk toward him, Ning Yu focused his mind. If he made the slightest mistake, he would immediately release An Haoping and the white-haired Elder from his spatial ring. A moment later, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets stopped in front of Ning Yu and said, I've wanted to see you for a long time. I didn't think it would take so long. Ning Yu smiled at the Elder of Heavenly Secrets but did not say anything. I want to take you as my disciple. What do you think? Ning Yu did not say anything. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets did not care at all. Instead, he said something that left Ning Yu dumbfounded. He wanted to take Ning Yu as his disciple. Ning Yu was slightly taken aback by the Elder of Heavenly Secrets' words. His expression was a little dumbfounded. What was going on? Ning Yu was still on his guard against the Elder of Heavenly Secrets. He was worried that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets and Jushin would collude against him. Who would have thought that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets would want to take him as his disciple? This change was simply too great. It was so great that Ning Yu was extremely dumbfounded. I know this might be a little abrupt, but the immortal spirit realm will be in turmoil for a period of time. I don't want the art of heavenly secrets to be lost, so I want to find a disciple to teach him the art of heavenly secrets. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets' mouth moved, but no sound came out. Lip reading. It was obvious that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets did not want Jushin to hear this. He was afraid that Jushin would be driven to desperate action. After a brief moment of shock, Ning Yu completely calmed down. This was because Ning Yu discovered a terrifying seal on the Elder of Heavenly Secrets. The seal on the Elder of Heavenly Secrets was comparable to the energy seal in the body of the human demon. This discovery slightly alleviated the worry in Ning Yu's heart. Since there was a seal on the Elder of Heavenly Secrets, it meant that there was an 80% chance that what the Elder of Heavenly Secrets said was true. Of course, Ning Yu could not completely believe the Elder of Heavenly Secrets. He turned slightly and also mouthed, "There's no hurry. Let's save my friend first." Within the array, the safety of the Dark Emperor, Ning Lu, and the rest were still under threat. Ning Yu did not want to waste time. This matter needs to be considered at length. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets said, "That array is an expert from the Jin clan." At this point, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets paused for a moment and pointed to the Jin clan sage beside Ning Yu. It was set up by his brother. Its defensive power is shocking and can withstand the attack of a late-stage sage. If that's the case, Doesn't it mean that only martial artists at the peak of the Sage realm can break the formation? Ning Yu was stunned and said, "Yes, you can say that. Therefore, it will be very difficult to break through the array with the strength of your side." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets nodded. "Senior, what do you think we should do now?" Ning Yu forced himself to calm down. "Wait." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets extended a finger. "When the time is right, I will personally teach Jushin the Elder of Heavenly Secrets. That will be the best opportunity. That's all I can do." Taking a deep breath, Ning Yu tried his best to calm himself down and make himself look calmer. The more critical the moment, the more he could not panic. However, Ning Yu could not place all his hopes on the Elder of Heavenly Secrets. He waited quietly as he began to contact An Haoping and the white-haired elder in his storage ring. In fact, Ning Yu even contacted the little Kirin. The reason why he contacted the little Kirin was not because Ning Yu wanted the little Kirin to help, but because he wanted the little Kirin to control the Grim Man. To be more precise, he wanted the little Kirin to control the Grim Man's self-destruction. At this critical moment, Ning Yu decided to abandon the Grim Man. As long as he knew that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets was working together with Jushin, he would immediately use the Grim Man's self-destruction to gain the upper hand. Although Ning Yu had this plan, he had to admit that even with the help of the little Kirin, he would not be able to make the Grim Man self-destruct. It was extremely difficult to make a late-stage sage explode. One had to realize that even the human demon had not been able to make Smiling Tiger self-destruct. Instead, he had used a fake self-destruction to deceive Liu Chuanji. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.